to the polls to cast their votes in this year's Republican and Democratic primaries.
Today's primary elections will determine who will face off in November when the balance of the United States Congress is at stake, and it all starts today. We have teams spread out across the state bringing you those watch parties to your living room. CBS News Detroit is the place to be to bring you all of the information you'll need for every race that matters to you.
Let's start with Elaine Rojas Castillo, who is covering the Haley Stevens campaign today, the Democratic candidate looking to face Mike Rogers in November. This is a huge race with people watching it all over the country.
That's right, Shayna and Terrence. We're here at the St. Regis Hotel where the Stevens team is gearing up for the candidate to make her appearance now that polls have just closed. Now, as we're learning more about where she may have landed in these results, we wanted to learn a little bit more about who she was as she approaches this potential general election. Now, before being elected to Congress, Stevens served as chief of staff for the U.S. Auto Rescue. She later flipped a Republican-held House seat and has made her experience by winning competitive races a central part of her case for Democratic voters, with that electability argument becoming a major dividing line in this primary.
The only future I'm looking to define is making sure that the futures of Michiganders are brighter, that they can afford their gas and their groceries, that they know that they can afford a home, that they can get an appointment with a doctor when they get sick and not have to worry about going bankrupt.
That sound that you just heard was actually her competitor, Abdul Al-Sayed. But as we approach the end of this contest, we're looking to find out whether or not she's best positioned to reach the general election in November, but she has been getting support from some notable Democrats, including retiring Senator Gary Peters, as well as Governor Gretchen Whitmer. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when these results start coming in. But for now, we're reporting live here in Detroit, but let's hand it over to Heath Kalb, who's covering one of our governor's races. Heath?
Thanks, Elaine. Yeah, we're here in Sterling Heights. We've been covering the campaign of John James, the congressman, the Republican congressman for District 10 here in Michigan. He started his campaign for governor just over a year ago in April of 2025, and since then, he has been seen as the front runner in this race for some time, especially since June of this year when President Trump gave him that very important endorsement, of course, for the Republican Party. So most people have been thinking of John James as the front runner for this race. There was a larger pool of people running for governor, for the Republican nominee for governor here in Michigan. As of right now, there's only 2 people actually still having their campaign open. There's 4 people on the ballot, but both Eric Nesbitt and Mike Cox have suspended their campaigns. So as of right now, John James is only running against business person turned politician Perry Johnson. But like I mentioned, John James is the favorite as of right now. So like Elaine said, we are right now at the election night watch party for the John James campaign. People are still coming in. We're expecting to hear from John James around 9 o'clock, and as the polls are closing, we're expecting to hear news that maybe John James is the Republican nominee for governor, and then, of course, that would mean that he's slated to face off against what we assume to be Jocelyn Benson in November in the general election. And the person for CBS Detroit that is following Jocelyn Benson's campaign is Alicia Bergio. I'll toss it over to her right now.
Hey, Heath. Yeah, it's been just over an hour since the doors opened here at the Garden Theater in Detroit. This is where Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson is holding her election night party for her supporters this evening. Now, people are still making their way in. As I said, the doors opened just about an hour ago, but you can already feel the energy in this room tonight. Many people are hopeful that this Democratic gubernatorial candidate will take home that victory. Now, Benson is facing off against Genesee County Sheriff Chris Swanson. He's also campaigning to become Michigan's next Democratic governor. The winner will be on the November ballot. We'll take that top spot on the November ballot. The numbers, they are, still trickling in right now. The polls, we're waiting to find out if Benson is ahead of Swanson or not. But of course, numbers can change. We're waiting to find out. Now, I'm told by organizers that Benson, she will be taking the stage shortly after the race is called. But I'm also told by organizers that Detroit Mayor Mary Sheffield is expected to give remarks. She's also, in addition to that, Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist is expected to make an appearance, as well as Wayne County Executive Warren Evans. So a lot of excitement surrounding this election, and this night is just getting started. But I'm just going to send things back to you in studio. Reporting live in Detroit, Alicia Bergio, CBS News, Detroit.
All right, thank you, Alicia. It's definitely going to be a busy night. Our team is everywhere, as you can see. Some of everywhere is spread out throughout the area. And on top of the crews out in the field, we're also all hands on deck here in the studio.
As those results start to come in later tonight, we will be bringing you the latest information from our brand new interactive election rotunda. That's where Terrell Bailey is standing by for those results. Terrell.
Yes. Welcome, everyone, to the CBS News Detroit Interactive Election Rotunda. Quite a fitting name, I feel like we can all agree tonight, as we monitor all things Michigan election. So we just heard from our Alicia Bergio. The gubernatorial election, a lot of eyes on it. Who will lead the state of Michigan after Governor Gretchen Whitmer? Obviously, the final answer will come in November, but tonight kind of gives us a clearer picture on the two people that we will see on that November ballot. Taking a look at the Republican primary for governor, you have John James, you have Perry Johnson, and you have Mike Cox and Eric Nesbitt. Now, the latter two names that I just said, no, they have dropped out of the race, but their names are still actively on the ballot. So as we go throughout the night, all of these numbers are supposed to say zero. Seemingly, they are? Oh, so we are starting actively right now. It is 8:07, and we're starting to get those numbers in. Seemingly, Congressman John James, 49.2%. Don't you love live television, everyone? Businessman Perry Johnson with 30.4%. Mike Cox still 17.7%, and Eric Nesbitt 2.8%. It's very early, but granted, the latter two candidates, they have dropped out of the race. So seemingly, I'm learning this information right now, everyone. Seemingly, people are actively selecting Mike Cox and Eric Nesbitt. Of course, CBS News Detroit, we will continue following this. I'm going to be live right here in our interactive election rotunda. Shayna, Terrence, I'm going to toss things back to you all.
All right, live TV and a live primary night. It's exciting. Thank you, Terrell. We are also joined tonight by our political analysts, Tim Kiska and Jonathan Hansen. Thank you both for being here to help us break down all of these races as the results start to pour in. Let's start with the U.S. Senate race. All eyes are on this race across the country, even outside of the country. Jonathan, let's start with you. Talk about how high these stakes are for the Democratic Party.
Oh, the stakes are very high. First of all, the Senate is up for contention, and Democrats feel that they need to hold the seat in Michigan in order to have a chance at taking back the U.S. Senate. And then there's also a broader message that comes out of this election about the direction of the Democratic Party. El Said is running as a progressive and is taking on a more moderate, one would say the establishment candidate in Haley Stevens. And, Michigan being an important swing state, the way that the voters go in this primary sends a message to politicians nationally about the future of the direction of the Democratic Party.
And Tim, in terms of sending that message, how do you think this could trickle up to the White House? We've seen that President Trump is obviously invested in what happens here.
Well, I think he's probably looking at how the Senate's going to look coming out of November. And I think the progressives have a point to make here, which is, I think they've been hearing from the mainstream folks, you guys don't know how to, you've never won an election. And I think that they want to be able to prove by winning Michigan that, hey, yes, we can. And our message does resonate with voters. And I think that's why this is a very big deal, and I'm sure Donald Trump is looking at this quite closely.
And speaking of the president, Tim, he has been involved in some of these races. He's endorsed a number of candidates in the gubernatorial race, Congressman John James, but he also has pretty low approval ratings across the board right now. And this is, it's a midterm election. It tends to be that the party in power suffers a little bit in midterm elections. So what role do you think President Trump will be playing in these Michigan primaries?
Well, being President Trump, he's going to try to play a big role. That's kind of what he does. But, you make an interesting point. I think that his endorsement does cut both ways. Now, in a Republican primary, this is a very big deal. John James having that endorsement, I think, will go a long way. But what this is going to do in November, I'm not sure having a Trump endorsement is necessarily going to help, because I think there are so many people out there who think that the White House is a total dumpster fire, and they're going to show up to make their feelings known, and we'll see what happens there.
Yeah. Jonathan, as we heard from Terrell, we're already starting to get some of those numbers coming in, and we see that Cox and Nesbitt, both who've dropped out, we're getting some votes. And we've talked about the importance of voters paying attention and making sure that they know what's on their ballot. What do you make of us seeing them getting some votes there?
It's hard to know for sure what could be going on. Were these early votes that were being displayed, or maybe voters are just not too attached to the front running, the candidates who are remaining in the race, and they're still deciding as more of a protest vote to cast votes for those other two? So I couldn't say for sure, but I would say that either it's lack of information or lack of attachment to these top two remaining candidates.
Yeah, let's talk about just the fork in the road that Michigan might present, you know, especially when we're looking at this U.S. Senate race. We have seen a lot of progressive versus establishment candidates where the progressive candidate has won in other places in very blue cities like New York City. Michigan's a little bit of a different test case. Jonathan, can you talk about that, why Michigan itself is more of a fork in the road for the direction of the Democratic Party, at least?
Well, the way I see it, Michigan is in many ways a microcosm of the broader United States. I mean, we've got our urban centers, we have rural areas, we've got a racial and demographic makeup that reflects the U.S. in many respects. So unlike, say, New York City, where we have, you know, the election of a prominent mayor, you could see the message coming out of Michigan as saying something that is perhaps a bigger statement about the direction that the country could go. And given that Michigan is, you know, we're a battleground state, we're going to be right in the thick of this fall election, as we have been for the last several elections, the importance of what happens today shouldn't be understated.
Yeah, and that speaks to the message that we've been talking about for a while, the fact that Michigan really plays a role in the direction the whole country goes. Can you speak to why this is such an important state in terms of mapping out what we see trickling down in other states?
Well, I mean, it's what he said is a second up. We're a microcosm of the rest of the country, and I think that's part of it. And the other thing is, you mentioned, okay, Zoran Mamdani of New York. Okay, he takes New York. New York's its own. It's not its own city. It's its own country, right? So the big question becomes, what's a progressive going to do in the great heartland, which is kind of what we are, and will that message play here? Now the progressives are saying, oh yeah, people are ready for somebody like us, and depending on how things turn out tonight, that might be the point may be proved.
Yeah, we will find out, and if recent polling is any indicator, we might find out sooner than we expect. So we're going to have those results as soon as they start to come in. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. As we've mentioned, a lot of important races coming up tonight. After the break, Tim is going to stick around and discuss District 13, that House race between Sri Tanadar and Donovan McKinney.
Also ahead in our next half hour, CBS News correspondent Anthony Salvanto will be joining us from New York to break down that pivotal Democratic Senate race. Stay with us. Two Democrats are facing off in the race for Michigan's 13th congressional district. It's incumbent Congressman Sri Tanadar versus State Representative Donovan McKinney.
Political expert Tim Kiska is here with us to continue our conversations about this important race, definitely one of the ones that people are watching closely. Can you tell us your thoughts on where you could see this going? Tanadar, of course, the incumbent, two-time incumbent. The votes were split in the last election, but this time around, he faces a pretty serious challenge.
For sure. I mean, McKinney's got some pretty good backing. Bernie Sanders, AOC, and he's got that behind him. He seems to have some serious money. Now, Sri seems to have a lot of money. His ads are everywhere. But McKinney may make a spirited run at this thing. Sri got through 2 years ago comfortably, but there still seem to be some cracks in the pillars there. And we'll see tonight whether or not that happens.
Sri Tanadar is a more moderate candidate facing McKinney, a Democratic socialist. It's tempting to call this establishment versus progressive, but is Sri Tanadar truly an establishment candidate? He feels like he's in a bit of a class of his own.
True, but I think he's closer to the mainstream than he is as a socialist. And you know, it's interesting that word's being kicked around. I think that years ago, that was a little frightening word.
The establishment?
No, socialist.
Right.
You know, that, oh my God, socialist.
McKinney embraces it.
Embraces it, and I think that younger voters now look at this and they're not looking at it and saying, oh my God, you're a socialist. Get thee behind me. You're not seeing that as much anymore. So, I mean, that's another thing that's to keep an eye on. Now, interestingly enough, Abdul is not calling himself a socialist.
Right.
I think his line is he's a capitalist who knows how capitalism works, which is a great line. So he's not embracing it, but Donovan is. And Donovan also has that district is a very strange district. It's like Grosse Points, and it goes through Detroit. And I think it goes clear out to Wyandotte, for God's sake, or someplace like that.
But majority black, majority
black,
Detroit.
Which is something that Sri, you know, that's the elephant in the room. I think there are a lot of African-American political leaders who said, no, wait a minute. Why is this guy our congressman?
Yeah.
And I think one day I think there's going to be an account for that.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who are calling for change in terms of that representation. Also, when it comes to Tanadar's wealth, a lot of people question sometimes whether or not he really can connect with the voters and the people that he represents because of the advantages that he has. Do you think that that comes into play with some of these votes tonight?
It does, to a degree. I think in the end, I'm not sure that's as much of a deal breaker as it is. There's something very simple that doesn't get measured. Service. If you got a problem with your passport and call his office up, can you get help? That sort of thing. And I think that's probably more important. That's how you connect with people, as opposed to John Dingell stayed in Congress forever. I mean, he was a smart politician, but his big thing was, if you needed some help, you called John Dingell's office.
It's going to get done.
And that's why he was around forever. There's a great story. John Engler had a driver whose brother had some problems with the VA, and they couldn't get it figured out for 15 years. It was kept on bouncing around. Finally, Engler calls Dingell, and Dingell gets it done within, I think, 2 weeks. That's why he stayed in office forever. Well, swinging back to Tanadar, that's going to count more than how much money he's got. I don't think he outwardly flaunts it. I think he more talks about being a man of the people. Whether he is or not, I don't know. The voters are going to have to decide that or not.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about, a lot has been said on the campaign trail about restoring black representation to this majority black district.
Correct.
And 2 years ago, as Terrence kind of mentioned, there was an opportunity to do that, and there were several black candidates, some very prominent black candidates, and that kind of split the vote. So Sri Tanadar still came out on top. It feels like a very different situation when it's just a one-on-one, head-to-head race.
It is, and that's what might make a difference for Donovan McKinney. I mean, he's run a pretty credible campaign in a lot of different ways. One thing I can't judge, because I can't figure out all of those TV ads, how much does that sway people? I don't know the answer to that in this case. sometimes there's too much. And I wonder, you don't know you've hit that line until it's way too late. And I'm just throwing this out there. I don't know if Shree's hit that line. There's just too much going on.
Yeah, and again, bringing it back to that black representation, it's been since 2022 that we've seen a black person representing for Congress.
Right.
Do you think that that really will have a lot of weight? And also the fact that we talked about some voters just being a little disconnected. Do you think that name recognition that Tanadar has could get him even more of those votes?
That's going to help, but I think that ultimately, I mean, I know the East Side somewhat, and pretty well. I mean, I grew up there. Race is a major, major, major factor, and whether people are going to act on that is always the question. Will people show up? At what point do people say, by God, we really do need another African American in Congress from Michigan, and I will show up to make sure that that happens? Well, that's sometimes a little bit of a lift.
Well, since Tanadar is the incumbent, let's talk about his record a little bit. He's made some waves. He's definitely taken some criticism, including from his own party in Washington, D.C. So what would you say about the job he's done? You've mentioned some of the kind of grassroots and how he's been involved in voters' lives, but what do you make of the job he has done in Washington, D.C. itself?
I have a hard time judging that. I mean, he's been there for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much that's, that you vote on that it's really hard to sort of pick one thing out and say, aha, this is what he's all about. I mean, he's pretty much a mainstream player, not entirely. He's certainly not on the squad, the AOC crowd, but he's part of the mainstream. He plays the game.
Yeah.
So.
All right, it'll be really interesting to see where that race goes. We're going to have those results as they come in. Tim, I know you're sticking with us for a while, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, another race that we are watching is the race for mayor in Ann Arbor. They could be choosing a new mayor this year. The Democratic candidates include incumbent Mayor Chris Taylor and Washtenaw County Commissioner Yusuf Rabi. In the meantime, statewide races are not the only big races that we're following here tonight. Jack Springate is standing by in Ann Arbor, where he has an eye on the mayoral race. Jack, what are you seeing tonight?
Hey, Shana, Terrence. Actually, what I'm going to talk about now is the complete opposite, essentially. Obviously, there's a lot of interest from Ann Arborites in that mayoral race, but I caught up with several voters this morning as they were leaving the polls to ask them what some of the other races are weighing on their minds, and many of them told me they know how much is at stake for that U.S. Senate seat as well as the gubernatorial primaries. Now, Ann Arbor historically tends to lean left with its voting record, so there's going to be a lot of interest in who comes out of the Democratic side of both of those races. Is it going to be Abdul El Sayed or Haley Stevens taking on Mike Rogers for Michigan's U.S. Senate seat? And is it going to be Jocelyn Benson or Chris Swanson carrying the torch for Democrats as they look to keep control of the governor's office against who seems to be either John James or Perry Johnson in November? Now, a few of the voters that I spoke with this morning told me what mattered most to them when they were filling out their ballots.
Governor race and some of the representative races, but the governor race was the main one. I think Michigan needs some new direction, better management.
I'm a U of M alum. I'm a 50-year alum. You don't know the campus area anymore. There's nothing up there now but these towers that don't belong here.
That second voter commenting on one of the big issues in the Ann Arbor mayoral race, the number of high rises that have been going up around the University of Michigan campus, as well as down here in downtown Ann Arbor. This is also where both of the candidates, incumbent Chris Taylor and challenger Washtenaw County Commissioner Yusuf Rabi, are having their watch parties. They're actually just about 500 feet apart from each other on this road right behind me. We're expecting to hear from Yusuf Rabi, have him address his supporters around 8:50. We're going to try to get in there and feed it back to you all to see live. And we know Taylor will be nearby as those numbers come in throughout the night. We'll make sure to get in touch and speak with the winner of this race once it's called. But for now, reporting live in Ann Arbor, I'm Jack Springate, CBS News Detroit.
Yeah, with all the developments Jack mentioned, affordability, the cost of living, a huge topic on Ann Arbor voters' minds tonight, and really Michiganders across the state. Thank you, Jack, and we will be right back.
Yep.
Welcome back to our primary election coverage streaming on CBS Detroit. I'm Terrence Friday.
I'm Shayna Humphreys. The polls are now closed, and it is time to start tallying up those votes. This race is being watched closely around the country. We're talking about the Democratic nomination for U.S. Senate. It's between Dr. Abdul El-Sayed and Congresswoman Haley Stevens. For more on this, joining us live from New York is CBS News correspondent Anthony Salvanto. Anthony, as you can imagine, this is top of mind for us here in Michigan. This is the big story tonight on primary night. Can you give us kind of the outside perspective and why it's such a big deal outside of the borders of our state?
Oh, it's top of mind for everybody who follows politics around the country. And here at the CBS Data Desk, what we're going to do is break down these votes as they come in. Now, polls have not closed statewide. We are getting vote reports from some of the counties in the Eastern time zone. But let me show you the larger context to your question about what matters here in the larger sense. I'm going to show you our map of where the Senate battlegrounds are, coast to coast. And as you can see here, red, leaning blue, Michigan, a pure toss-up going into the fall. Well, there aren't that many of them, and that's what makes Michigan so important. The other part of this is going to be the Democrats' debate, if you will, within the party about what kind of candidate it will take to ultimately win Michigan. And in that regard, a couple of things we're going to watch. The first one is the early vote. Now, when I looked at the kind of voters who would cast their ballots early, many of them were over 65. That might be your historically more solid Democratic constituency. I'm sure the Stevens campaign is hoping to win a lot of votes from that. But there's going to be this dynamic once the state fully closes of Election Day turnout. And that, I think, is what the El-Sayed campaign is counting on, especially from a lot of younger voters. That's really the dynamic as those reports start coming in, which we will watch here at the Data Desk. That plays forward into November by what does it take for Democrats to win this state, which President Trump won in 2024. What kind of voters do they need to swing it back, guys?
All right, Anthony, thank you. And of course, this is one that we are watching closely. Our Veronica Ortega right now at the El-Sayed campaign watch party. Veronica, what are you seeing right now? We're seeing some of the numbers finally start to come in. What's the energy like?
So, Terrence, every time the numbers come up on the big screen behind me, the crowd lets out a big cheer here at the Majestic Theater in Detroit. More people continue to come in for the Abdul El-Sayed watch party. As we've already indicated, this race is being watched very closely. Many see this as a battle between establishment and anti-establishment Democrats. Now, some believe if Abdul El-Sayed pulls off a victory tonight, it will send a clear message to the Democratic Party that the progressive movement is resonating with a lot of people here and across the country. The former Wayne County Health and Human Services Director doesn't really like labels, though. He sees this as a battle between the money and the many. During the last debate, he pointed out that his opponent, Haley Stevens, has received donations from DTE's Corporate Political Action Committee in the past for her House campaign. He also mentioned that outside groups have spent millions of dollars in support of Stevens. One of his objectives is to take money out of politics. He wants to ban the practice of outside spending in elections from super PACs. And a recent Emerson College poll shows that El-Sayed has a double-digit lead over Stevens heading into this primary, but other polling has shown that the candidates are neck and neck, and others putting Stevens ahead. Polls have indicated, however, that El-Sayed would likely lose to Mike Rogers in a general election, but El-Sayed doesn't believe that's true. He believes that he can take on Mike Rogers, but of course, he has to get past Haley Stevens first. And again, there's a lot of people right now behind me. More continue to come in, and the energy right now, everyone's excited. Everyone is looking forward to a long night, but it's positive right now. Shayna, Terrence, back to you.
All right, we expect those numbers to keep coming in, and we'll see. The polls have looked good for El-Sayed, but you never know what's going to happen on election night. Thank you, Veronica. Let's head out to our Elle Myers now. She is kind of in the room with the people who may be watching this race closer than anyone, and that is where Mike Rogers' campaign is. Former congressman for a decade and a half in Michigan, well-known face, but he's watching tonight to find out who his opponent will be from tomorrow through November. Elle, what's the mood there?
Yeah, Shayna, we're expecting Mike Rogers to make an appearance at this watch party here in Sterling Heights a little later on with a slightly clearer picture of who he'll be facing in the fall. Now, I'll tell you, this part of the race has been pretty easy for him. He's running unopposed in the Republican primary election. This isn't the first time Rogers has run. Back in 2024, he went head-to-head with Alyssa Slotkin and lost by just a small margin. Rogers was born and raised in Livingston County and served in the state Senate back in the 90s, but he's no stranger to Congress either. He served at the federal level in the early 2000s. Now, after some time in the private sector and a short stint living in Florida, Rogers is back and looking to serve again. So you guys, we're expecting upwards of 300 people at this watch party, all very excited to see the returns. Let me send it back to you.
All right, thank you, Elle. And we will keep checking in with those watch parties as we get more information about things that continue to change throughout the night. Those polls closed just moments ago, and of course, we're tracking the numbers for you.
All right, let's head into the election room with Terrell.
Yes, so welcome back to the interactive election rotunda. Let's take a look at some of the numbers. We just heard Elle. She's talking about that highly contested Senate race. So I want to point out very quick, okay, it's only 8:37. 3% of the vote is in right now. Abdul El Sayed, 62.3% of the vote right now. That's just over 27,000 votes. Then you have Congresswoman Haley Stevens, 14,000 votes, and State Senator Mallory McMorrow with 3.7% of the vote. Granted, let's just point this out. Once again, only 3% of the vote is in right now at 8:37. And clearly people, they have made their voices heard. They went to the ballot box today and they still selected State Senator Mallory McMorrow. Granted that she dropped out of the race. So let's just talk about endorsements themselves. Congresswoman Haley Stevens, she's received an endorsement from current Senator Gary Peters, former U.S. Senator Debbie Stabenow, and our current Governor Gretchen Whitmer. While Abdul, he has received support from Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, current Senator Bernie Sanders, and Senator Elizabeth Warren. So if we just kind of look at the two, it seems as though Abdul, he is getting that support from those individuals that have larger name recognition versus Congresswoman Haley Stevens. She's getting support especially from Michigan leaders. Now, one thing that really stood out to me is the UAW. Who did they throw their support after? This man right here. So really very, very interesting. But one thing I want to point out, whoever wins this seat in November, obviously you are going to be a U.S. Senator alongside current U.S. Senator for Michigan, Alyssa Slotkin. Alyssa Slotkin, as of right now, still 8:38. She has not formally endorsed any of the Senate candidates, so maybe she's possibly waiting until after things kind of clear out before November to throw her support behind a candidate. But this is how things are looking right now, live in our election rotunda. Shayna, Terrence, sending things back to you and the analysts.
All right, we are now going to head back to Detroit, where our Elaine Rojas Castillo is covering the Haley Stevens campaign.
Yeah, another one that we are watching very closely. Elaine, can you tell us what things are looking like there? We're seeing some of the other watch parties that are happening. Of course, people are watching from different perspectives. What are you seeing there?
Well, Shayna and Terrence, it's a little quiet still. Right now, they haven't let as many people in. We're still waiting for sort of that first wave of people to come inside. But from what we're hearing, things are still up in the air. We know that the returns are slowly starting to come in, and this race really is neck and neck. Pollsters at 1 minute are calling it for one candidate, and at another, it's a dead heat. And sometimes Stevens' opponent, Abdul El Sayed, is taking the lead on that. But as of right now, we're still really trying to figure out where this is going to go. But one of the things that Stevens made sure to do as she campaigned for this Senate seat was to really focus not only on her success in Congress, but also what she plans to do as a day one senator. That includes looking at tariffs, includes making sure that jobs stay in Michigan. But a little bit earlier this week, she spoke about what she plans to do if she gets elected.
I've been underestimated before, and I also, have stood up for Michigan in really tough moments.
That was just one of the things that Stevens said ahead of today's primary. She also focuses on making sure that people understand that she's working to keep things not only in state, but also make sure that money stays in Michiganders' pockets. But it'll be interesting to see if those comments resonated with voters as results continue to roll in. But for now, reporting live in Detroit, Elaine Rojas Castillo, CBS News Detroit.
We will see. Those polls closed just a few minutes ago.
Striking to see so far. Very different atmosphere in the El Sayed campaign headquarters compared to Stevens. Not that that says anything, but just interesting to see this early point in the night. We have much more to come, though. We'll be right back.
All right, we are going to check in right now at the watch party that's happening for John James, the combat veteran who is running to be Michigan's next governor. He got the endorsement of President Trump. You see the people that he is in that race with on the Republican side and Democratic side, both hoping to secure that spot. We're going to check in now with Heath Kalb to see how things are looking at that watch party tonight.
Yeah, Terrence, it's kind of a similar feeling here in Sterling Heights at the election watch party for John James as it was for the watch party Veronica's at for Dr. Abdul Sayed, because the early polling numbers are good for John James, and it's not really so surprising. This is a man who first announced his run for the nominee for Republican governor here in Michigan back in April of 2025, and ever since then he's been looked at as the favorite, and that has only been strengthened since June when President Trump, of course, endorsed John James. Right now, people are still filling in here. We still have not heard from John James. We expect to hear from him at this election watch party around 9 o'clock or so. But like I mentioned, the polling numbers are coming in strong for him right now, and people are excited. There's about 300 to 400 people inside this room right now, members of the campaign tell me. And John James is someone who the Republican Party, for the most part, is getting behind. He's someone who was in the U.S. Army. He is someone who has won 2 consecutive congressional races in the 10th district here in Michigan, and right now he's only up against one campaign for this nominee, and that is, of course, Perry Johnson, who has been a successful businessman turned outsider politician. The other two people, I should say, who are running for that nominee for the Republican governor, Eric Nesbitt and Mike Cox, have suspended their campaigns. So while you see their names on the polling numbers tonight that are coming in, they have suspended their campaigns. We really only expect it to be between John James and Perry Johnson. So the polling numbers are still, it's really early, but the people here are excited as those numbers are certainly favoring him. We'll continue to keep you updated, and we're looking forward to hearing from John James sometime soon this evening. I'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
Thank you, Heath. Of course, John James stepping away from his duties as the member of Congress from the 10th Congressional District. That's what we're going to talk about a little bit next. It's a wide open seat at this point, and there are several candidates hoping to take his spot. I think we have an image of those candidates here. At the top of your screen, you have the Democratic candidates Eric Chung, Tim Greimel, and Christina Hines. Then we've got Michael Bouchard Jr., Stephen Demetropoulos, and Justin Kirk on the Republican side.
And we've got Tim Kiska here with us to continue the conversation about this. With James giving up his seat to run for governor, how does this change the direction we could be going here?
Well, it could change the lineup, in the congressional lineup here in Michigan. Now, that particular district, I mean, if you take Van Dyke and from 8 Mile, just go up to M59, you're pretty much catching a good chunk of the district. And then there's Rochester Hills. It's about 3% plus Republican, so it leans a little bit Republican in this case, but it's still one of these seats that could be an open seat. When John James first ran, he ran against a guy named Carl Merlinga, won by about this much, and the Democratic Party was going, could have beat this guy, why didn't we put some money in there? And so 2 years ago, they put some money in it, and it got worse for Merlinga. He ran again. James did a little bit better. So, I mean, I think this thing could go either way. Like I said, it trends a little bit Republican by about 3 points, and we'll see what happens in November.
And this is one of those districts where there are specific issues that make sense. It's a manufacturing hub. This is southern Macomb, a little bit of Oakland County.
Right.
So this is Warren, Sterling Heights, Clinton Township,
Right.
a lot of auto parts manufacturers. With everything that's been going on in Washington with the tariffs and trade wars, we've had a lot of back and forth with the auto industry. How do you think that might affect this election?
Major, absolutely major, because, I mean, talk about something that impacts everybody's lives, and you just hit it right on that particular district has been like, this is the old Reagan Democrat area, and in a lot of different ways, the auto industry goes up, auto industry goes down. It's like the old line about Michigan, when the auto industry catches cold, Michigan gets pneumonia. That's kind of this district in a lot of different ways. So that's why it's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, and we're watching the local issues, of course, but national issues also come into play here, right?
Oh yeah, tariffs is a big deal. President Trump is in here a little bit. He's backed Mike Bouchard Jr. in this particular race. So it'll be curious to see how that district goes for in the Senate race, the Democratic Senate race. If they kind of lean toward Abdul, don't know if that's going to happen, but I think that'll tell you something as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is a pretty purple, it leans Republican, but arguably historically a purple district.
Absolutely. And as I said, 4 years ago, John James got there through the narrowest of margins, and not so much 2 years ago. But I think you could see a replay that another toss-up, another jump ball.
We'll certainly watch that. Tim, we'll get back to you in just a second. One of the other races that we are watching tonight is, of course, the race for mayor in Ann Arbor. Washtenaw County Commissioner and former state representative Yusuf Rabi is challenging longtime Mayor Christopher Taylor. We're going to listen in now at that party that is happening in progress.
Movement. But before I thank everyone here, I want to start by thanking my wife, Katie, and my son, who is not here, unfortunately. Many of you will probably leave now that you know this fact, but my son, Lunas, who is, he's been through a lot with his, he's doing great. He's living his best life. But the fact that I didn't get to spend basically the last 9 months with him, yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it. Now, hopefully, I'll get to spend some more time with him. So give him a round of applause because he's had to sacrifice too. Let's hear it for Josh, my campaign manager. Let's hear it for the whole campaign team that's here today. Let's hear it for all the volunteers. Everybody that knocked doors, that talked to voters, that made calls, that poll greeted today. Thank you for your work. Thank you for being part of this movement. I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. I want to thank my fathers-in-law, Mark and Mark. My parents are in the back somewhere. Peggy and Lunas in the back. My Aunt Samira is here. My cousin Marcus. My Aunt Jess. My niece and nephew, Iris, Theo, are here. I have so many family members here. If I've forgotten, my brother Nino is here. Give them all a round of applause. So, we set out on this campaign in February, not knowing what we would be able to achieve. And while the results are not in yet, just being out at the polls, being out on the doors, talking to the people of this community each and every day, I have a damn good feeling about how tonight is going to go. What we have built over the last several months is a movement for change in this community. It is a movement that believes that the voice and the power of the people is what should be in charge in this town. It is a movement that believes that the working people of Ann Arbor deserve a voice at the table too. It is a movement that believes that, yes, we can stand strong for our teachers and our municipal workers and our bus drivers who deserve fair contracts, for our nurses, for our GEO, for our graduate students. The working people of Ann Arbor deserve a champion that is going to stand with them each and every way. What we are doing here today is building a people-powered movement. And what we saw in this campaign, and you all know this because you've known me for as long as you have, but I'm a local kid. I went to Ann Arbor Public Schools. I grew up in this town. This town has given me everything that I have. And when I walk the streets of this community, I have nothing but love in my heart for the people, for the places, for the trees, for the community. I have nothing but love because I have been filled with nothing but love from this community. And so if I win tonight, I am ready to give my all for this community because this community has given me everything that I am. We have been through a lot these last few months, and especially when you look at the amount of negativity that was poured into this campaign. Like I said, I grew up in this community. I've been following politics for a while. I have never seen a campaign this nasty before. The amount of negative mail that was sent, the YouTube videos, the ads on your Hulu and streaming services, the text messages, lying about me, lying about my character, lying about my votes. Every mailer that you got was $20,000 a piece. Think about the amount of money that was poured into this race by corporate dark money interests. Yeah, boo. What we did in reaction to that, there were many moments where we felt, well, maybe we should do the same thing. We had the conversation. But every step of the way, we made the conscious decision to keep this campaign clean, to keep this campaign positive, and to focus on our message of putting power back in the hands of the people.
All right, you have been listening to candidate for Ann Arbor Mayor Yousef Rabhi, clearly an Abdul El Sayed supporter. He's got a couple of stickers on his chest, really just trying to rile up the crowd. Still early in the night, no real results there yet, but we will stand by. Of course, the incumbent mayor he's hoping to unseat is looking for a historic fourth term. It would make him the longest serving mayor in Ann Arbor history. As soon as we do have some results, we will head back out to Ann Arbor. But for now, let's go back to District 10. We've been talking about Macomb County, a little bit of Oakland County. Let's talk about some of these candidates. You mentioned Michael Bouchard Jr. It's a very familiar name to many people in the area because of his father. He shares that name with the Oakland County Sheriff, Michael Bouchard. How much of a help or possibly hindrance do you think that might be for him?
I think it's a help. I think that Bouchard, I think, has got a pretty good image. Across, he's run for office before, he didn't win, but that doesn't necessarily mean he doesn't have a good image. So I think that helps a lot. I think the Trump endorsement for the primary helps quite a bit. I think that the AOC endorsement for, I believe, Chung, I think is going to help somewhat there. How much, I don't know in that particular district.
Yeah.
Now, Eric Chung, he's someone that we had here on the show, and he was talking to us about what he hopes to see and do. There are some people who've had some questions, though, about his background. How much do you think that endorsement will help him moving forward?
Hard to say. I mean, I think a lot of people, when you get into a primary like this, well, Eric Chung, do I know that name? The endorsement can help put you over the top. And I've noticed some of the TV ads, which are, he's playing that note of working class manufacturing jobs, that sort of thing. I think that's going to play big in that district. But that's the trick about primaries. People are, they're kind of in the fog about all of this. And sometimes a small number of people, particularly if they're enthused, can swing the whole thing. I've seen it happen time and time again. That could happen tonight. I don't know that it will, but there you go.
Yeah, because we're really just boiling it down to get to November.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to come down to, and I think this race is going to stand out above a lot of others once we get to November, because once again, it's that old Reagan Democrat. Which way are these folks going to vote? They're really not in anybody's pocket. They kind of keep. I grew up in Centerline, by the way, which is right in the middle of this thing. These folks keep their own counsel. They're their own best advisors in a lot of different ways, and you don't know how they're going to swing. You don't know a lot of times until the last minute which way that they're, what's driven their vote, one way or the other.
And sometimes it may come down to who's more motivated to turn out in a midterm election year.
That is the big thing of all. I mean, but I think this midterm is going to be major for a lot of different reasons. Dissatisfaction with President Trump, dissatisfaction with politics in general.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of what's going on, a lot of what's driven Abdul's attraction is a lot of people are just, give me something different. Give me somebody who throws a punch because things are so crazy. Give me somebody who's going to get really loud and make a lot of noise. And whether they're going to do anything when they get there, that's another story entirely. But people, I think, are just sort of close to driven by the edge. You see it a little bit on TV. You certainly see it a lot on the web.
Yes.
In this U.S. Senate race, it really surprised me after Mallory McMorrow dropped out. It's like somebody somewhere pressed a button.
Turned up the temperature.
Yeah, it turned up the temperature, and all of a sudden the fists are flying, and
Yeah.
oh my God, what's going to happen next? And why that happened, I'm not entirely sure. But I do think personally, I think it's sort of an example of people just being frustrated in general. And whoever gives voice to that frustration this time around may win.
Yeah, I think it's a theme tonight and will be for the next few months. People are fed up on both sides of the aisle, and it really does seem the inter-party conflict has really turned up on both sides of the aisle. So it's not just left versus right, it's left versus further left and right versus further right. So there's all these factions now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the so-called MAGA crowd, they're starting to turn on each other. And there's always been, among conservatives, kind of a confrontation kind of thing going on. With the Democrats, this has been going on since like the late 40s. It'll go underground for a while, and then it'll come back up. But you know, I'm just old enough to remember the 1968 Democratic Convention, where there's fist fights on the convention floor, and the mayor of Chicago using the F-bomb at the guy, you know, and people battling the streets, and oh my God, it was a total crazy nightmare. Now, we haven't gotten there yet.
No. We've gotten our own creative alternatives to that, I guess.
But we're getting, you know, I think I wonder if we're getting to the warm-up stage, you know, where people are just putting on their gloves, and I don't know that that's going to happen. I think, hypothetically, if Abdul wins tonight, the question is, does the Haley crowd sign up with him?
Sure, I was just going to ask you that. Do you think, you know, we're seeing this sort of imploding, so to speak, with these parties. Do you think that this could bring some unity because of the widespread frustration just across the nation in general?
Well, it's going to take a little while to. That's the greatest question, and it's going to take a while to find that out, because I think right now you hear a lot of Abdul people saying, "By God, I'm staying home," and I think the more they hear from the Haley people saying, "Oh, well, how does U.S. Senator Mike Rogers sound to you?" They may start singing a different tune, and vice versa as well. I think ultimately the Democrats have to understand that if they're going to do any business, particularly in this state, this is one of a handful of states where, as our analyst from CBS News in New York pointed out, this is the Democrats need to win this if they're going to take the Senate. And the Republicans need to win it if they're going to keep the Senate. And that's why I think all roads are going to converge on this state in the next few months.
Well, much more to come on the races for Senate, for Congress, and so many more across the state. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's talk about the governor's race now. On the Democratic side, we've got current Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson facing off against Genesee County Sheriff Chris Swanson. I want to go to our Alicia Bergio, who is out with the Benson campaign, where they are awaiting some more results to keep pouring in tonight. Hi, Alicia.
Hey, Shayna, good evening to you. That's right, we are here at the Garden Theater here in Detroit, where Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson is hosting her election party here in Detroit. You can definitely feel the energy in the room. A lot of people are feeling very hopeful that the Democratic gubernatorial candidate will take home that victory, including former Michigan State Rep. Mari Manoogian. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me, what brought you out here tonight?
Well, I'm the executive director of an organization called the Next 50. We support principled, pragmatic, energetic Democrats all across the country, and Jocelyn Benson's one of them.
Explain why you think Jocelyn Benson would make a good fit for governor.
Well, she's already done a fabulous job as our Secretary of State, especially what she's done to make sure there's a 30-minute guarantee at the DMV. It is so critical that we're able to deliver for Michiganders, and Jocelyn has a track record of doing so.
As the results are slowly coming in, right? How are you feeling? Are you feeling hopeful? Are you feeling optimistic that she will take home this victory?
I know she's going to win tonight, and I think she's going to win in November. She has a track record of delivering for our state, and Michiganders are hungry for someone who can do so. She's the one who's going to do it.
What are some of the top issues that are important to you that you hope that Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson really tackles if she were to take home that win?
She needs to address housing and the cost of living, and that's something that she has a plan for.
All right. Well, if Benson, now, if she was to take home this victory, what would it mean to you personally?
Well, she's been a phenomenal mentor to me personally throughout my time in office, as well as since I've left the state legislature. And so to see her be able to get this decisive win this evening and go on in November, I know she's going to be a phenomenal governor. So I'm very excited for her.
All right. Well, Mari, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, you guys, Benson, she is facing off against Democrat Chris Swanson. He is the Genesee County Sheriff, and he's also campaigning to become Michigan's next Democratic governor. The winner tonight, they're going to take that top spot on the November ballot. Now, as we mentioned, numbers, they're still trickling in, but right now polls are showing that Benson is greatly ahead of Swanson right now. Of course, it's still early in the night. Those numbers could change. Now, so far this evening, we've already heard from Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist and Wayne County Executive Warren Evans. I'm also told that Mayor Mary Sheffield here in Detroit, she will be taking the stage at some point before Benson makes remarks. So a lot of excitement surrounding this election. But for now, I'm going to send things back to you in studio. Reporting live in Detroit at the Garden Theater, Alicia Bergio, CBS News, Detroit.
All right, Terrell is in the election rotunda, so we're going to head over there. She mentioned the results are trickling in, and Terrell, I know you're taking a closer look at them as they come in. What are you seeing in those results for the governor's race?
Yes, so the name of the game tonight is Wait and You Shall See. Who will be the next governor for the great state of Michigan, or the Mitten State, as some like to joke and say. So 17% of the votes are in right now. Let's just hold on. Let's just take a look at that. Okay, 17% of the vote is in. It is 9:09. Polls have basically been closed about an hour and 10 minutes. Clearly, Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson with over 80% of the vote right now, and the Genesee County Sheriff Chris Swanson 15.4%. So clearly, that's about 250,000 votes being counted right now for the Democratic ballot at 9:10. Can we go ahead and switch to the Republican side? Let's just kind of see how people in Michigan are voting for their next governor. All right, Congressman John James right now sitting at 51.6%, clearly in the lead. Businessman Perry Johnson, that's kind of high, 35.5%. Then the former Attorney General Mike Cox, 11.8%, and Eric Nesbitt. Now, clearly, you noticed earlier when we were talking about the Democrats, it was at 17%. For the Republican gubernatorial candidate, the primary, 11% of the vote is only in. But one thing that stands out to me, both of these guys right here, they have dropped out of the race. Clearly, that means Michiganders went to the polls. They selected their names, although the individuals dropped out of the race. One thing I want to just kind of make clear and point out. There's one name that I thought I was going to see on the ballot when it comes to the primary election today, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people are feeling the exact same way as me. Mike Duggan, the former Detroit mayor, last year he announced that he was running to become the next governor for the state of Michigan, but he recently dropped out about 1 to maybe 3 months ago. He ran as an independent, but Duggan really just couldn't draw up that support as if he had ran, say, as a Democrat or as a Republican. So the big question I'm wondering, if you love Mike Duggan and you love the city of Detroit, who do you vote for? There are so many people that I know. Shayna Terrence, we have talked to people when he first announced that he was running for governor, and people were elated about that. So if you love Mike Duggan, who do you vote for, a Democrat or a Republican? Only time will tell, but those are the things that we're following in the election rotunda. So I'm hearing our Elaine Rojas Castillo. She is currently at a watch party for Congresswoman Haley Stevens. Elaine, what's going on your end?
Well, Terrell, it's interesting. The typical energy around a watch party about an hour after polls close is a lot of noise, a lot of activity, but it's an interesting situation here at the St. Regis Hotel. We're all stationed in what will be, I'd imagine, where the Congresswoman will speak behind us. You can kind of see that podium. But just across the hall, there's a bit of a barricade where there are supporters of the Congresswoman, but they haven't made their way inside. So we can see signs, we can see energy, but in terms of what's happening in this room, it's pretty subdued. You know, we're surrounded by our fellow members of the media, but we haven't really heard much from the campaign in terms of how they're taking in these numbers. Obviously, things are still rolling in, so we're working to figure out, you know, where this race is going. But throughout the days leading up to today, Stevens hit the campaign trail and really tried to drive home her message to voters, one of which being what's impacting Michiganders and how she plans to address that on Capitol Hill. Some of the things she talked about were tariffs, making sure that jobs stay here in our state, as well as making sure that people actually feel the money that's reaching their pockets. Take a listen to what she had to say.
I've been underestimated before, and I also, have stood up for Michigan in really tough moments.
The Congresswoman pointed to not only her experience as a Congresswoman, but the ability to flip a seat that was typically Republican to a Democratic ticket, and she's hoping that that momentum can continue to carry her to the general election come November. So it'll be interesting to see not only what happens later on in the next couple of months, but really where this campaign and where this race will end up tonight will be really interesting to see where we go forward. And hopefully we'll start getting more information as the night progresses. But for now, reporting live in Detroit, Elaine Rojas Castillo, CBS News Detroit.
All right, thank you, Elaine. We do have some big news in the gubernatorial race. CBS News projects that Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson has won the Democratic primary. She's won the nomination for governor.
Yeah, she came in as a front runner, and tonight she was able to deliver on that, something that she has experience with because in the past, Michigan voters elected her Secretary of State in 2018 and then re-elected her again in 2022.
Yeah, she had that name recognition statewide, hard to compete. Also had a very big fundraising advantage over Genesee County Sheriff Chris Swanson. So it remains to be seen who she will be facing in November, but we should have those results pretty soon.
Yeah, we're still seeing those numbers coming in. As you see, we're getting some of the results already, and we'll continue to bring you those updates as soon as we get them. Right now, we have to take a quick break.
Give it up for that. She is a true leader. When I took office as mayor of this great city just 7 months ago, yes, I knew that we were going to need strong partners in Lansing who were committed to getting things done. And serving in this role as mayor has really strengthened that belief. Because now more than ever, at a time when so many of our rights, our freedoms, our beliefs are being challenged, this is not a moment for hesitation. This is a moment for courage, a moment for conviction, and we need leaders like Jocelyn, who will fight for the people, who will stand with the people, and who will deliver for the people. Not just for the wealthy and the well-connected, but every hard-working Michigander. I've known Jocelyn my entire time in public office, and every time I've called her, she's been there. She's been accessible, she's been honest, she's been thoughtful, and she's always been ready to roll up her sleeves and help. She has consistently demonstrated her commitment to Detroit, to our residents, and to communities across this state. The daughter of public school teachers, Detroit is where she chose to build her life. She could have chose anywhere else. It is where she and her husband are raising their son. And it is a city she never stopped fighting for. From her earliest days as a law clerk under Detroit's own, the late Judge Damon J. Keith, she learned a lesson that shaped the course of her career. Judge Keith famously said, "Democracies die behind closed doors." And those words reinforced her belief that public service is a sacred trust rooted in transparency, accountability, and an unwavering commitment to the people they serve. And she has carried those values throughout her entire career. As Michigan's 43rd Secretary of State, she transformed one of the most state's frustrating it was, bureaucracies into a national model of efficiency, accessibility, and service. Yes. Whew. So much easier, right? Going to the Secretary of State. She helped make Michigan a national leader in fair and secure elections. She defended the integrity of our democracy when it was tested. And she proved that government can work better when people are first. I've watched Jocelyn lead with conviction. I've watched her meet adversity with courage. And I've watched her remain steadfast in her commitment to doing what is right, even when it wasn't easy. That is the kind of leader Michigan deserves. And if there is one thing that I know and I've learned about Jocelyn Benson, it is this: she never backs down from a challenge. After all, we know she's completed over 40 marathons, including one while she was 8 months pregnant. And for her, marathons have never been about just crossing a finish line. They're about perseverance, about resilience, about believing that no challenge is too great and no finish line is ever reached without courage and determination. And now she is running another marathon, a marathon to lower cost and raise wages for Michigan families, to create opportunity for every community, a marathon to make life more affordable, from the grocery store to the gas pump, from the doctor's office to the cost of housing, and to build a state where our children can afford to stay, to build their futures and raise their families right here in Michigan. A marathon towards a stronger and more prosperous Michigan. And that is why tonight we all stand here hopeful. Hopeful because of her leadership, hopeful because of her vision, and hopeful because of her unwavering belief that Michigan's best days are still ahead of us. And the marathon continues, but this time we are all running alongside her. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor and privilege to introduce my friend, our Democratic nominee for governor and the next governor of the great state of Michigan, Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson.
I am so thrilled to stand before you as the Democratic Party's nominee to be the next governor of Michigan. Thank you. Thank you all for being a part of this moment, for being a part of our team. Thank you for placing your trust in me to work for you and with you to transform our state. Tonight, the general election begins. Tonight marks our opportunity to grow our coalition to include citizens in every corner of our state who believe, as we do, that the power of the people must always be greater than the people in power. My life's work is about making that promise, that hope, a reality. I carry that hope with me every day as the daughter of public school teachers, the wife of a combat veteran, as the mom of a 10-year-old little boy whose future will be shaped by what we do now together. Because that is the question facing voters this fall, my friends. Who do you want Michigan's leaders to work for? The people or the powerful? Well, you all know who I'll work for. I will work for all of you and every Michigander in this state, not the highest bidder, not corporate interests, not Donald Trump, you. So I'm here tonight asking you to work with me to build a government together whose leaders work for the people, a government that saves us time, saves us money, and makes our life easier, a government led by a trifecta of state leaders who are committed to working together to make Michigan a place where anyone can afford to live and thrive, where childcare is affordable for all, where homes are easily built so that teachers and nurses and farmers can afford to live in the communities where they work, where every Michigander has access to quality health care and water that is safe to drink and air that is clean to breathe and a public education system that prepares our children for the jobs of the future. As the next governor of Michigan, I will work with you to drive down costs while expanding our economy. And yes, I will work with anyone to get that done. But I will also be ready to stand up to anyone, no matter how wealthy or powerful, who gets in our way. I've done that as Secretary of State, and I'm ready to do it as governor. I love this state, and I know when I talk to the single mom in Muskegon who has to decide, Mayor Muhammad, who has to decide whether to eat or pay rent, or when I sit down with seniors in Warren who are anxious about paying for medicine on a fixed income, I know we must do right by them. Just the other day, I sat down with a new mom and dad right here in Detroit, and I held their newborn little girl in my arms. And I listened as they talked to me about how they don't want their child to grow up in poverty. And as a mom, I can't stop thinking about that conversation, about how every decision we make now will shape the world that their little girl and my little boy and all of our children will grow up in. And in the eyes of that little girl's mom and dad, I saw two people who simply wanted what every parent wants, a chance for their child to grow up healthy, happy, and safe. To live in a state where she can get a world-class public education, afford to see a doctor when she needs one, get reproductive care because it is her right, build a career she loves, and live in a home that she can afford and not have to work 5 jobs in order to do it all. Right? It is our job to deliver that for her and for every person in this state. That's what it means to have leaders, a governor who works for the people. I will work for the veteran who deserves access to the health care they earned, the teachers who dedicate their lives to preparing our children for the future and who deserve pay and more respect. For the children whose futures depend on the work that we do today. Our campaign is about them and all of you. Costs down, wages up, rights protected, end corruption, and build a government that works for all of us. And again, you all know I'll work with anyone and everyone to get that done, but I'm also unafraid to stand up to anyone who gets in our way. And this moment demands leaders who will stand up with courage, unafraid to bullies. And boy, boy, do I know how to do that. Like when Donald Trump tried to pressure me into turning over your private voting information, I said no, and I'll see you in court. And I won. I want you to know that even if it means sheltering in my home, protecting my son, while people with guns protest on my front lawn, I am not afraid to stand up to anyone who would try to take away your rights and freedoms. And that, again, will be the choice facing Michigan's voters this fall. Who does your governor work for? What does she stand for? And who does she fight for? The Republicans have already shown us their vision for Michigan. It's a vision that would raise healthcare costs instead of lowering them, a vision that would allow housing costs to climb instead of fighting to bring them down, and a party whose leaders stood with Donald Trump when he tried to overturn a free and fair election and instead of standing with the people of Michigan. That is not the future that Michigan wants or needs. And together, we're going to reject it this November. Because the bottom line to me is this: Michigan deserves a governor who answers to the people, not corporations, not to the DeVos family, and not to Donald Trump. And my friends, I'll just say, Michiganders voted in this primary, which, by the way, is on track to be one of the highest turnout primary elections in state history. They voted in this primary because they are asking us to fight for them, to stand up for them, to fix what is broken for them. And I am committed as the next governor of Michigan to make sure we deliver. But I cannot do it alone. I need your help to get this done. I'm asking you tonight to knock those doors, make those calls, talk to your neighbors, leave here tonight ready to remind people what is at stake and what is possible when we come together. Let's take tonight's landslide victory and let's deliver another one this fall. I'm going to ask you tonight, as the eyes of the nation are on Michigan, right? I'm asking you to show the nation who we are, what we stand for, and who we are fighting for. So I'm going to ask you, like I asked you in 2018, like I asked you in 2022, are you ready to work for democracy? Are you ready to fight for democracy? Are you ready to vote for democracy? Well, let's get it done and let's go win. Thank you, guys. I love you.
All right, a nice moment there for the now Democratic nominee for governor, Jocelyn Benson. Not only did she walk out to Man Eater by Nelly Furtado, she danced out to it at the end there. What did you guys think of that, especially the strong introduction and endorsement by Detroit Mayor Mary Sheffield? Jonathan?
Well, I mean, it's notable that, the mayor and other officials are lined up ready to deliver these speeches. It was an indication that this result was kind of expected, but the way it came through so strong, and then her speech tonight was very nice. So I think it sets her up very strongly for what could be a reasonably tough campaign this fall.
Yeah, this is only the first step. A victory still. What does she need to do moving forward, Tim, to unite the party?
Ooh. I don't think she's got a big of a problem as whoever the Senate candidate is going to be, because she didn't have a tough primary. But I think it's just doing that unified message of affordability, of fighting Washington when that needs to be done, that sort of thing. So she's got an easier job of it than I think whoever the Democratic U.S. Senate primary person is going to be.
Yeah, I'm interested in both of your opinions. This is a purple state, and it's tempting to suggest that Benson might have a bit of an advantage coming from Whitmer. People might think, okay, we'll see one female Democratic governor and then the next. But this is a very purple state, and we've seen Michiganders flop right back and forth over the years. So what do you think that these candidates are going to have to do to kind of appeal to the moderates, to those at the center of the spectrum? We'll start with you, Tim.
Well, I mean, I think they're going to have to dance real well. I don't know what trying to bring the temperature down would help, but good luck with that.
She's talking about armed protesters on her front lawn there. The temperature's pretty high.
Yeah, it's pretty high right now. How you bring that down, I don't know. I only see it going up as time goes on. So I'm not sure. Like I said, I think she's got an easier time of it. The party seems pretty well united behind her in the fact that she's got no competition. Yeah. She had no competition to speak of, except for Chris Swanson from Genesee County. So, I think the party sort of cleared the way for her. Cleared the path, as it were. Whether that's going to help in November, we'll see.
What do you think, Jonathan?
Well, this is an interesting dynamic here, in that, being that Whitmer's the incumbent, any anti-incumbency movement would tend to work against Jocelyn Benson in this race. However, it's this midterm election season where things are moving the other direction, where in general Republicans are not polling very strongly. And the third factor here is that though Whitmer's an incumbent, she's also a very popular incumbent. It's pretty rare for a politician to survive 8 years in office and still have approval above 50%. So I think Benson's in a pretty good spot to kind of hold those moderates, because those folks are pretty happy with Whitmer's performance, and I think Jocelyn Benson also has her own performance as Secretary of State to draw on, and so it's kind of a message of change, but also a bit of continuity at the same time. A new face, but policies that people will recognize.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, not a lot of fight there with those voters. What about independents and maybe undecided voters? Do you think that there's much of a fight there?
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there's a whole trove of voters out there that are kind of in the fog, saying maybe they voted for Trump 2 years ago, and now they're wondering, well, maybe was that a good move or not? But then again, they're kind of wondering what exactly does the Democratic Party stand for, anyhow? So I think that there's a whole group of people out there that undecided. They're not sure. Maybe they like Abdul because he's shaking his fist at the clouds and making a lot of noise, and that's attractive at the moment. Whether that's still going to be attractive in November is something that remains to be seen. So.
There's kind of an interesting dynamic with her being the active Secretary of State. You have the President of the United States pushing stricter voter restrictions, actively trying to do that as we get closer to November. And she even brought it up in her speech there. She's kind of in a position to counter him, to push back against that. So what role do you think her current job, the job she is known for across the state, will play into this campaign cycle headed into November?
Well, I see it could play roles in two different ways. I mean, first of all, as the head election official for the state, she's got a record, and people have generally been pretty happy with what she's done in terms of that position. I noticed she talked about democracy in her speech, which is, to me, an interesting message. A lot of Democrats were talking about democracy 2 years ago, but you don't hear it as much this time around. It's more about affordability. But I think for her, this is a key issue. The preservation of a safe and secure election system free from undue outside influences is important. On the other hand, there will always be opponents who will look at this and say, well, this makes our elections suspect because she's running for office and she's still the sitting Secretary of State. So you can't win either direction with that sort of argument.
Yeah. As we get to November, what kind of role do you think other voices, outside voices, could play into this, like President Trump or the governor, for example?
Oh, huge. President Trump, for certain. I think that the squad, as it were, AOC and Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, I think that they're going to have a voice as well. I mean, Michigan's going to be a crossroad in so many ways. You're going to hear a lot from a lot of different people, over a period of time. So,
I think one thing that will interest me is the extent to which the Republican candidates actually ask President Trump to come into the state to campaign for them. President sitting with about 35% approval, not exactly an asset in a general election campaign, certainly an asset in a primary campaign, I think. But time will tell how this plays out. But it is an interesting dynamic of this difficult midterm election cycle for these candidates who kind of want to run against the tide. And Trump is part of the tide right now.
So if you're a campaign manager for John James or Perry Johnson, should he win, both are Trump loyalists. John James, of course, got the Trump endorsement. Of course, that's a huge asset during the primary, as you just noted. But going forward, are you shying away from that? Do you want the president completely tied with your name and your image over the next 3 months?
You have to walk a very delicate line because you don't want to alienate the supporters of the president. You don't want to alienate the president by not making him feel unwelcome. But at the same time, the voters that you're trying to reach, the crucial swing voters, are not voters that are going to respond to President Trump very well right at this point in time. So you kind of want to do it both ways, mobilize your base, attract the middle, and that's a difficult thing to do.
You got to dance.
I think that, not to sound irreverent, but okay, yeah, invite him in. What's he going to say when he gets here?
Always a question mark.
Yeah,
always a
sure.
question
Big
mark.
question.
Even for his aides, who's maybe they've written something up, maybe they haven't, but they don't know what he's
known
going
for
to
going off script.
Yeah, go off script, and God knows what he would say. So, man, if I were running a campaign, I don't know what I'd do. I'd go run. I'd join a monastery is what I would.
Maybe find a new job.
It could be a bit of a gamble.
Yeah, right, exactly.
All right, we have to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Thank you for staying with us, gentlemen. We'll continue the conversation after this.
we've got some more results pouring in. CBS News projects that Michael Bouchard Jr. has won the race in Congressional District 10 and Rashida Tlaib won the race in District 12.
Yeah, two of those races that we've also been watching very closely for you. Our Terrell Bailey is in our election rotundo, looking at those numbers as they continue trickling in. Terrell, what are we seeing? How's it looking?
Yes, so the numbers right now, 946, they continue to roll in. Shayna and Terrence, you are exactly correct. District 10 for the Republican side of things already being projected. Michael Bouchard being the projected winner. So I want to talk about District 10 because District 10 sometimes is often a swing district. So come November, things could go Republican or Democratic. District 10 consists of cities like Clinton Township, Rochester Hills, East Point, Roseville. So we never know how voters in this district are going, but clearly we can see right now Michael Bouchard with 73% of the vote. Polls close at 8 o'clock. It's already 9:45, and he's the projected winner. Now, of course, he has kind of been seen as the front runner in this District 10 congressional race because just like Congressman John James, Michael Bouchard, he also received an endorsement from President Donald Trump. So this is how things are looking when it comes to the Republican primary for District 10, which, like I said, is considered a swing district. Let's look at the Democrats right now, because I know those numbers are still actively coming in right now at 9:47, 21% of the vote, and clearly you see it there. Christina Hines with 44, almost 45% of the vote at the hour. She's a local prosecutor. Then you have Eric Chung, and a local attorney right behind her with 33%. And then former Pontiac Mayor Tim Grimmel sitting at nearly 22% of the vote. So like we said, here in our election rotunda, we will continue following the numbers as they continue to roll in. But clearly, this is kind of a close race right here. Eric Chung still, he's basically about 3,000 points right behind, 3,000 votes rather, right behind Christina Hines. Definitely going to keep a close eye on this. Who will replace Congressman John James when it comes to his district in November? Only time will tell. Now let's talk about District 12. That is currently Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. Okay, 14% of the vote. And right now, well, you see it right there, Byron Nolan. Byron Nolan is actually the current mayor of Inkster. Then you have Chanel Jackson. Chanel Jackson previously was in the State House. And last but not least, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, 64.2% of the vote right now. So Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, she has been in that role since 2018. District 12 is overall strongly favored by Democrats. And in November of 2024, that was the last time Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib was elected. Over 250,000 people voted for her. November 2024, right now, 64.2%. That's 13,000 voters for the current Congresswoman. So come November, there is no Republican primary for District 12. Right now, it is James Hooper. James Hooper is no stranger to Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. They were both in that election together in November of 2024. So basically, it's going to be a rematch again come November. Of course, CBS News Detroit, we will continue following this race and, of course, District 13, District 10. But I'm told our Elaine Rojas Castillo, she is with Congresswoman Haley Stevens. Elaine, I know right now it's been basically 2 hours since the polls have closed. Some watch parties are very excited, while others, they might be biting their nails right about now.
Well, Terrell, I mean, you couldn't have said it better. The energy really depends on what watch party you're going to. And here at the Stevens party, we're in Midtown Detroit at the St. Regis Hotel. It's a really interesting scenario. So right now we're in the main area where Stevens is expected to speak later on this evening. You can see the podium right behind me. But just across the hallway, right behind sort of a partition, is a lot of her supporters, but we haven't really seen them or had access to them. We can see signs kind of in the distance. You can hear music. We've been hearing a lot of music, but in terms of any sort of movement in this room, it's really just been members of the media. So we're not really sure why that decision was made, but we're still trying to figure out where this race is really headed. Now, as you've been talking about all evening long, this race is hotly contested. I mean, it's a national story that's making the rounds everywhere, and all eyes have been on Michigan when it comes to this race. This seat has been held by Senator Gary Peters for years, and with his retirement, a second seat is opening not too long after the last seat opened up, where current Senator Alyssa Slotkin narrowly won that race. So it'll be interesting to see how this primary turns out. Right now, we've seen things kind of go back and forth. The latest returns are still showing a lead for her opponent, Abdul Al-Sayed, but it is interesting to see that these returns come in gradually. Now, Terrell, you've mentioned a couple of times that it's been 2 hours, but different areas turn them in quicker, and obviously we know that the metro area, those results will come in a little bit later, so it's really anybody's guess where this race is going to go. But of course, as things develop, we'll be sure to continue updating you, and if we hear anything from the Stevens camp, we'll be sure to get it to you as soon as we can. But for live reporting at the St. Regis Hotel in Detroit, Elaine Rojas Castillo, CBS News Detroit.
Well, the energy here at the watch party for Abdul El-Sayed is very different from what Elaine is experiencing over at the Haley Stevens watch party. It's very loud and kind of hard to hear. That's because there's a lot of people here, a lot of excited chatter, clearly, because every time they see more results come in, they yell in joy. And again, it's clear that a lot of people here cannot wait for this race to be called because they are optimistic that things are going to be in their favor. I'm joined now by State Senator Darren Camilleri, and he's here for the watch party. Obviously, Darren, you're here because you're throwing your support behind El-Sayed. Why have you chosen to support him?
You know, Abdul has the type of vision and message that Michiganders and Americans are really asking for right now in the moment of a Donald Trump presidency. We need somebody who's going to put more money in our pockets, somebody who's going to advocate to take money out of politics and ensure that health care is available to every American. And that's something that Abdul really stands for, because right now we are not seeing the type of leadership that I think our Democratic Party needs in order to be meeting this moment to push back against the Trump administration. I'm so excited that Abdul has a great shot to win tonight, and I look forward to calling him U.S. Senator.
Do you consider yourself a progressive?
You know, I am somebody who is definitely more progressive, but I also am pragmatic, and I believe in finding a way to get results. And Abdul is just like that as well. You know, we are about solutions, and we are making sure that we can make improvements to the lives of the people that we serve, and that's why I'm so excited to support Abdul.
If Abdul is to win tonight, what does that say about the broader progressive movement, not just here in Michigan, but across the country?
I think it's important because for Abdul to pull off a victory tonight means that Americans are asking for more and demanding more of our leaders, and the same old Washington-style establishment politics will not work. And I think that that's something that we are going to see tonight, because I hear it in my own community. People are fed up. They're sick of the Trump administration and the corruption, and we need a new set of leaders to help push back.
Some early polling suggested that El-Sayed may have some trouble defeating Mike Rogers in a general election. Do you believe that's true, or do you see him rising to that challenge?
We still have a long time between now and Election Day. Tonight is about getting Abdul the nomination, and then we will take this fight to the doorstep of Mike Rogers, which, by the way, is probably in Florida, because he spends more time there than he does here in Michigan. And we know that he is an out-of-touch millionaire who does not have the needs of working-class people here in Michigan at the center of his agenda. Abdul will, and I know that he'll take that fight to him in November, and we're going to be victorious.
Okay, is there anything else you'd like to add that you think people should know?
I think we're just really excited about the results tonight, and the energy that's here in this room is indicative of the type of energy that people want to see us bring to November, and just make sure that we carry this momentum all the way until then.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. All right, you heard it here, the energy, the momentum. They're hoping to carry that into the general election in November. We're still waiting for the results to come into this race and for the race to be called, but again, people are very optimistic. Let's send things over now to Alicia Bergio, where the race was called. She's at the watch party for Jocelyn Benson.
That's right, Veronica. A landslide victory for Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. You cannot beat the energy in this room. It is just simply electric. That is the best way that I can describe this. Benson officially named the Democratic candidate running to become Michigan's next governor come November. She actually just wrapped up on stage about 20-30 minutes ago, celebrating this victory with her supporters. You can actually still see the crowd gathering to celebrate. Some people are even dancing. Benson says her goal as governor to improve the cost of living for all Michiganders. She plans to expand health care, build more affordable housing, take on utility companies who raise rates, and make child care free. These are just a few key issues that Benson has highlighted throughout her campaign, and she plans to bring that same momentum to the general election in November. Now, something Benson said that really got the crowd going was that the power of the people must always be greater than the people in power. So a lot of excitement surrounding this election, and Benson says that she is ready to hit the ground running for the general election come November. But for now, we're going to send things over to Heath, who is covering the John James campaign. Heath, how's it going over there?
Thanks, Alicia. Yeah, it is a really joyous atmosphere here as the polling numbers continue to go in. And even though it is early, right now, John James is in the lead. He has been looked at as the favorite for a long time. We're here with one of his longtime supporters, Macomb County Prosecutor Peter Lucido. I'll bring Peter in right now. Peter, you have supported John James for a long time in this race. Right now, even though only about 15% of the vote has been counted, it looks like he might be the Republican nominee for the governor. Why are you in support of him?
Why wouldn't I be? I know that John James has the tenacity. He also has the drive and the conviction to go ahead and help the people of not only Macomb County, where he is already the congressional leader, but also the entire state. I also know that his background and his upbringing, he went to the same schools, as far as I'm concerned, that gave him certain roots and given him certain values that all of us enjoy and need to be brought back to. And I also like the fact that he's a family guy. He lives in my neighborhood. And you know what? That's all about what Macomb County is. Family first, and faith, and also take care of business.
And then just lastly, Peter, I know that his campaign does not want him to go up there until they're really certain that he is won the ticket for the nominee to go up against what looks like is going to be Jocelyn Benson in November. What do you hope to hear from John tonight at the podium?
I want him to say the same thing he said all along. I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing it for my family and your family, and businesses that need to get a reprieve, and people that just need a break in life, because this state is a great state. We're surrounded by the Great Lakes, but we also have what I call a very sincere value of what it is we are about. We are in an area right now where it's time to go ahead and succeed and rebuild Michigan. This is the man to rebuild Michigan.
Awesome. And just one more, Peter, for you. He obviously got President Trump's endorsement back in June, and that is something that's going to help him. Are you happy that he is someone that takes a lot of the same positions as President Trump? I know that could be a controversial talking point for so many Republicans, so many people who might support John James. How do you feel about that?
Taking a Trump position on everything is not what I'm about. It's picking and choosing the things that are going to help Michiganders. President Trump is a national, 50 different states. But when you're talking about Michigan, you have to pick and choose those values that are going to help the citizens here in Michigan. John James knows what those values are. Without those values, we don't have Michigan. Michigan is the best out there. We are one to be reckoned with. And go ahead, make sure John James is the one to take it on home tonight.
Thank you so much, Peter. Really appreciate your time. We're going to send it back to the studio, Terrence and Shayna, but we really appreciate the time for Macomb County Prosecutor Peter Lucido here in Sterling Heights.
All right, thank you, Heath. We're going to head from Sterling Heights to Detroit now, where we understand Dr. Abdul El Sayed is about to speak. Now, we want to say the results are not in for this race, nowhere near called. This is the big race everyone's watching, but we do understand he's about to speak to his supporters, so we're interested to see what he has to say at this point.
This is certainly one that we want to hear from. Veronica was talking earlier about the fact that everyone in there was so excited and obviously optimistic and hoping to hear something good.
A lot of momentum at his back. Earlier in the summer, he was polling well behind Haley Stevens, but as of last week, pulled way ahead in front in the polls, and you can kind of see that over the last few days as they campaigned. He seemed to have a little bit of an extra air of confidence about him. I think we're still waiting for him to take the stage, so we're going to take a brief break and then come right back. Welcome back. As we told you earlier, CBS News projects that Michael Bouchard Jr. is the Republican nominee for Congress in District 10. Right now, you're looking at the Democratic candidates for District 11, actually. So we're going to get to that race in a moment. But I know Michael Bouchard Jr. has spoken on the stage, and our Matt Finkel was there. I think we're going to listen into that for a bit. Or perhaps we won't. Maybe we'll talk instead about District 11. So this is Oakland County, Haley Stevens' current district. It's a night that we're watching this closely. This is another wide open seat, just like District 10, John James' former district. Of course, both of those Congress people running for a different office now. And it's a wide open seat, so contested on both sides.
Yeah, so we're going to continue to watch that and see the changes. Just in terms of what we're seeing tonight, we're going to bring back in our political analyst. Thank you for sticking around with us. We know it's been a really long night. What are you thinking of what we're seeing so far?
Well, it's been an interesting night so far. I think nothing really unexpected, but then again, some of the polls were such that it was hard to get clear expectations for some of these races. Certainly Jocelyn Benson winning the nomination, expected. John James showing a lead, also kind of consistent with the polls. The Senate Democratic primary race is looking a little tighter than it was earlier this evening. That'll be an interesting one to watch going forward. And then in terms of District 11, as you mentioned, it's an open seat, and what I'm seeing so far is a lot of strength coming from Jeremy Moss and from Aisha Faruqi, running well ahead of the other two challengers. And so it'll be interesting to see how that race comes out. It's looking, Moss is running pretty strong, I would say, so things look very good.
He's another kind of establishment Democrat.
Very
He's got
much,
a lot of support.
Yeah, I would say he's running on more of the establishment platform in the sense that it's still a Democratic agenda, but not quite as progressive as, say, Faruqi is. Like Faruqi's Medicare for All and abolish ICE, and Moss's more reform ICE and expand the Affordable Care Act. So some differences in terms of the issues like that. But it's interesting to watch that race come out because it is a Democratic-leaning district. It didn't used to be if you go back 10 years, but now it is. The winner of that primary is looking pretty solid for the general. On the Republican side, it's Ethan. Gosh, I'm getting tired, so my name is
Baker.
Baker, right? is unopposed, and so he's the mayor of Troy. He is running a campaign that looks to me like a non-MAGA campaign. He's trying to run on a message of we need to be united and we need to listen to all voices. It's a very different kind of temper to what he says and his campaign messages than what we see from some other Republicans.
It'll be interesting to see how the Senate race impacts things that are down ballot, even if they're only slightly down ballot. So we're still talking about Congress, but Oakland County, we may have a lot of people turn out for either Haley Stevens, it is her district, or Abdul El Sayed, and that could impact whether they go with the more progressive or moderate candidate in Aisha Faruqi and Jeremy Moss. Are you expecting to see one of those races kind of determine the other?
That's a really good point. I hadn't considered the fact that, Syed is running really pretty strongly in Oakland County. He's only a couple of points behind Stevens, and this is her district, so one might expect her to be running with a bigger margin than she is. And, that would be consistent with the fact that Faruqi is running a really strong second place race right now on the primary for the House seat. And her policy platform lines up more closely with that of Syed than does Moss, for instance. So it's possible that there is a bit of a coattail effect there where Syed's voters are carrying down a down ticket.
All right, so now we're going to check back in with the Michael Bouchard Jr. campaign. We have that speech ready now. Let's listen in.
So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the next congressman of the 10th District, Captain Michael Bouchard.
Well, good evening. Thank you all for coming. Truly, I can tell you guys are fired up. I'm fired up. But tonight's not about me. It's about you. It's about the voters of this district, the supporters of this campaign, the volunteers who have put in hundreds of hours of work. All of you stood with me. Janine, seriously. All of you stood with me, and we will stand up for this country. We're not going to back down. The real challenge starts tonight. I heard you, this district heard you, and now the country hears you. But I will say this, we're only halfway there. The goal from the beginning was to win in November. Tomorrow, the real contest begins. The real challenge comes center stage. But tonight, with the people who got me here, I want to take a minute. I want to look back at the journey and count our blessings. Because this time last year, I was in Iraq. And today, I'm incredibly humbled and honored to accept the nomination as a Republican nominee for Congress for the Michigan's 10th Congressional District. This election, we face a choice: stepping away from American values, higher taxes and socialism, or more freedoms, lower taxes, keeping more money in your pocket, and ensuring that American ideals continue to ring throughout this country. My mom started as a waitress. My dad started as a street cop. I started as a young infantry soldier. From my parents and the time in the Army, I learned the value of hard work, of leadership, and of service to this country. I'm running to bring that to Washington. I got back from a 9-month combat deployment to Iraq last October, and the next day I started running for this seat. I didn't wait. I didn't take a vacation. The seat is too important to lose. The auto manufacturers are counting on someone to bring more jobs back to this district. The workers are counting on someone to lower costs so they can raise families. And those parents are looking for someone to fix the education system that is so broken, so they know who is teaching their kids and what they're being taught. Parents deserve a voice, because when you give parents a chance, when you give parents a choice, you give kids a chance. But we must work together. We have to fight for our freedoms and the American way of life. As Ronald Reagan said, freedom is not handed down in the bloodstream. It must be fought for. And that is something that you and I can do together. I have so many people I want to thank. My family, my mom, my dad, my siblings, my brother who's here tonight. President Trump, House leadership, Congresswoman Lisa McClain, Congressman Jack Bergman, Congressman Wahlberg, Congressman Jim Jordan, who supported me extremely early and has consistently kept in touch. Prosecutor Pete Lucido, who seriously calls me every day, regardless of the time. That man does not sleep. He lives and breathes Macomb County. Supervisor Rick Stathakis, Mayor Brian Barnett, Senator Mike Weber, Mike McDonald, our great state reps Donnie Steele, Mike Harris, and Mark Tisdale, Spencer Abraham, Mike Bishop, John Engler, Bill Schuette, Pastor Lorenzo Sewell, David Dwyer, Dan Kress, and thousands of people who have supported this campaign. You know, we have more small dollar donors than anyone else in this race, and that shows the momentum and belief for why we are running. In my incredible support structure in my team, Hannah, Stu, Guy, Sean, Vince, Sam, and Isaac. Gus, Janine, Sandy, Scott. There are so many people who have made this campaign possible, and if I didn't mention you, it's because we're on live right now, and we need to keep this short, but I promise you I'm thankful for your support, and I am not forgetting it. I also want to thank my Republican opponents, Robert, Justin, and Stephan, for their willingness to enter the fray. It is not easy getting involved in politics, but they stepped up because they believe in this country like I do. So I thank them for running hard races, and I wish them success down the road, and I know we can work together to achieve the policies that we care so much about. While Republican voters of the 10th have definitively made me their nominee, the Democrat opponent is not yet known. But what we do know about the three opponents are that they are woke, weak, and unable to stand for this district. They all believe in socialized health care, amnesty for illegal immigrants, and weak, soft-on-crime policies. They all stand for tax hikes and increased federal spending. Now, there will be time to make our case, but I want to make one very clear promise before then. I will always look out for our veterans, our law enforcement, and Michigan families. No one will outwork me between now and November. So in closing, I want to say thank you to every voter who voted for me. I want to say thank you to my family, my friends, and supporters who made tonight possible. On to victory in November. God bless you and God bless America.
That was Michael Bouchard Jr., the Republican nominee for Congress in District 10. He was the front runner. This was not a surprise that he won that nomination tonight. Of course, he has that name recognition, being the son of the Oakland County Sheriff with the same name, Michael Bouchard. And importantly, he got the endorsement of President Trump. Very helpful in a Republican primary. Also the case in the gubernatorial race. I know we're going to talk about that next.
Yeah, seemed to help him a lot. Let's get to that conversation about the gubernatorial race. We're watching that, and also U.S. House District 13 with Sri Tanadar going against Donovan McKinney. Our Terrell Bailey joins us now live from our election rotunda with more on what we're seeing with those results.
So, Shayna, Terrence, you all just mentioned about having name recognition when it came to Michael Bouchard. Sri Tanadar has name recognition in District 13, going up against current state representative Donovan McKinney. Sri Tanadar, 40.4%. Granted, he has the name recognition, guys, over Donovan McKinney's 59.6% of the vote. Only 7% of the vote is in right now. It's 10:15. The polls have been closed for a little over an hour. So, of course, things can change as time goes on. But Donovan McKinney right now, 5,300 votes to Sri Tanadar's 3,600. We're definitely going to continue to watch this because Sri Tanadar, this is his active seat. So what happens moving forward after today? Only time will tell, but CBS News Detroit, we will continue to follow it. But let's talk about the gubernatorial election. Who is going to make it until November? Will it be Congressman John James? Right now, 50.2% of the vote, but right behind him, Perry Johnson. Perry Johnson, we got to give it to him. He's been hanging in there all night tonight. 36% of the vote, 84,000 votes for Perry Johnson, a businessman. But John James, 118,000 votes. Then you have former Attorney General Mike Cox and State Senator Eric Nesbitt. 23% of the vote is in right now. It's anyone's game. Who will be on that ticket come November? We already know. Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, she is the projected winner when it comes to the Democrats. So we already know in November it's going to be Jocelyn Benson versus who? Right now, it could be Congressman John James. He's already got that endorsement from President Donald Trump. Anyone's game, but November, we're going to keep a close eye on all things gubernatorial election. So I'm hearing our Veronica Ortega right now. She is at a watch party. Veronica, are things exciting or are things kind of, I don't know, melancholy?
Oh, definitely not melancholy, Terrell. The energy in the room is electric, to say the least. Take a look. Everybody is closely looking at that screen, which shows the results coming in for this race. And every time they look, they see that El Sayed has an early lead. So people are very optimistic that he's going to overcome Haley Stevens in this race. El Sayed has a list of priorities a mile long that differs significantly from Stevens. He has run this race on the idea that he wants to take the money out of politics. He wants to ban the practice of campaign contributions from super PACs. And for this race, he has said consistently that he has not accepted any corporate PAC money. El Sayed is firm in his wish to abolish ICE. He wants to prioritize education instead. And of course, his main goal has always been Medicare for all. So all of those ideas are clearly what has attracted a lot of people and a lot of supporters in this race. Now, initially at the start of this, people had him losing to Mike Rogers in a general election because they believed that his ideas were too progressive. But if he's able to overcome Stevens tonight, if he's able to best her in this primary, then that will suggest that the progressive movement here in Michigan and across the country really is really gaining a lot of momentum. So again, a lot of excitement here in Detroit at the Majestic Theater. We are anticipating that he is going to take the stage very soon, and when that happens, we will bring it over to you. And we're going to send things now off to Heath Kalb, who is covering one of the governor's races.
A similar atmosphere here inside of John James's election watch party in Sterling Heights as it is for you in Detroit, Dr. Abdullah Syed's watch party, because we still have not heard from John James, and we don't expect to hear from him until the campaign says that they are really certain that he is the Republican nominee for governor to face off against Jocelyn Benson in November in the general election. But right now, it's looking like it will be John James. I know Terrell in that beautiful studio of ours was showing Perry Johnson is having a solid night, but it does not look like he is going to defeat John James. Right now, James is still up by over 30,000 votes, but those votes are trickling in slowly, even though it's been a few hours since the polls have closed. Right now, there's still a few hundred people in here waiting patiently. I could say, similar to Veronica, every single time the TV's behind his show that John James is up in the polls and those numbers keep favoring him, people get excited and they are waiting for John. I know that people in the campaign have told us that they are tabulating the votes back there. They are doing the math, trying to figure out when they are going to be so certain that John James is going to take the podium and give his acceptance speech. I know we just heard from Michael Bouchard Jr. just a few moments ago. Obviously, that is the seat that John James is leaving to run for governor, which is the 10th district. And he's won that seat twice to be the congressional member of Congress there in the 10th district here in Michigan. He has been the favorite to win this primary for some time. And in June, like I've mentioned ad nauseum, when Donald Trump gave his endorsement to John James, it really helped John James, even though for some people that may not be their favorite endorsement. For a large chunk of this Republican Party, it is helping John James. Like we just spoke to Macomb County Prosecutor Peter Lucido. He said, well, maybe not everything Donald Trump says he's fond of, but certainly he's happy that John James, that he has President Trump's endorsement. So we're going to stay here. We're not exactly sure when Mr. John James is going to take the podium, but we'll be here and we're going to continue to cover his campaign this evening, tonight in Sterling Heights. And we'll have more primary coverage right here on CBS Detroit after the break.
Welcome back. We are joined once more by our political analyst this evening, Jonathan Hansen. Let's talk now about District 13. We touched on it a little bit earlier. We've got an incumbent Democratic congressman in Sri Tanadar facing a Democratic socialist in Donovan McKinney. Some of the early numbers are looking good for McKinney, but it is still very early. What are your thoughts on this race? It's another kind of progressive versus moderate.
Yeah, it's another one of those. And as you said, it's still very early. I think it's still below 10% of the vote is in. But it does look, I mean, McKinney can't be unhappy about what he's seen so far. You know, it's an interesting dynamic here because you have a self-made businessman who was able to fund his campaigns and ran basically in primaries that were like divided across many different candidates. And this is a Detroit district, which is a large percentage African American, and a lot of people think that it would be appropriate to have a black representative in Congress. And McKinney is the first of these candidates who would just take on Tanadar head-to-head, one-on-one race. And so that changes the dynamics quite a bit. But beyond that, when you look at the issues, I mean, you do see McKinney having the support of sort of the squad, you know, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the rest of the members of Congress who are part of the squad supporting him. And his agenda, you know, fits nicely within that sort of let's expand social services and do more for the people of the district. And it's quite consistent with what he's tried to do as a state legislator as well. Tanadar is kind of a, you know, he's a kind of unique figure. And, you know, he's been an active representative of the district. And it just remains to be seen in my mind how this plays out tonight. Where it's a different dynamic than what Tanadar has faced in the past.
Yeah, Tanadar has built some connection with some voters here in Detroit,
yeah.
But he's also upset people in different parts of his career so far, especially with some of the things that people will see as a stunt maybe with calling for impeachment for President Trump. How much do you think that comes into play with what we're seeing tonight, and also just the fact that McKinney is making a lot of noise and drumming up a lot of support?
Yeah, I think those things do come to mind when you think of Tanadar's over time things have happened. And, you know, let's just not forget the bread and butter work of a member of Congress in doing constituent services. And, you know, when you've got a problem, you want to call your congressional office to get something solved with, you know, federal government. Maybe your passport went missing, or maybe Social Security check's not arriving or something like that. And, you know, there's been some questions sometimes about whether the constituent service operation has been the strength of Tanadar's congressional affairs. And so that does have an effect on how voters perceive, you know, whether you care about the district and, you know, whether you can represent everybody effectively.
You know, the most successful members of Congress tend to have a lot of friends in Congress.
Yeah.
How might that play out? Because Sri Tanadar, in some cases, has sort of alienated members of his own party. As you mentioned, McKinney has the backing of the squad, some very prominent members of the party. So does one of them stand a chance to be a little bit more effective should they end up on the Hill?
Well, I think, you know, your ability to work with others, of course, is crucial. If you're going to try to get anything done in Congress, you want to have good relations with other members. And being able to navigate the halls of Congress and make friends, get co-sponsors for initiatives that you have is it can't be underestimated. And so, you know, it does, you know, portend well for McKinney that he's already got sort of a base set of supporters there who would be willing to work with him.
Yeah, I think we should move on to the much bigger moderate versus progressive race of the night that people around the nation are watching, especially as we wait for Abdul El-Sayed to take the stage. Let's talk about electability. For a lot of Democratic voters today, that's the number one thing on their mind. They are deciding between Stevens or El-Sayed based on who they think can take down Mike Rogers, who's a formidable opponent. If El-Sayed wins, do you think that the moderate Democrats, the Barack Obamas of the world, who didn't endorse Haley, but he did appear in some campaign ads, do you think all of these people, Whitmer, line up behind El-Sayed?
Well, I think that this race for the Democratic Party is a crucial race to win. And, you know, I think one of the reasons you hear people talk about electability is they just want they want one of the two to win. And whoever comes out of this primary, I think there will be a sort of rallying around that candidate. It may take a little bit of time. I know they've got a rally planned for after the primary to try to bring the party together. And of course, you do want to heal these divisions anytime there's been a sort of a brutal campaign. But when push comes to shove, this becomes no longer a race between these two people who are really fairly similar on policy issues when you really scratch them too hard. And you start to face the sort of common opponents in President Trump and the Republican Congress. You're going to see Democrats ally together behind whoever is the nominee.
All right, we'll check back in with you in just a sec. But right now, we want to get a look at how those numbers are shaping up with the Senate race. For that, we're going to bring in Anthony Salvato with CBS News, the Director of Elections and Surveys. What are you seeing right now?
Hey there, Terrence. Good to talk to you. So this race has gotten tighter as the night has gone along. What happened early on was that El Sayed got out to an early lead in the counted vote. But as you can see now, this margin is fairly tight. He's still got a lead, but it's still fairly tight. What has happened in terms of vote pattern is a couple of things. Out around you, if I zoom in here on Detroit, on Wayne County, Stevens hitting her marks, hitting about the number that she might need to keep this race competitive. That also tells a story about the kinds of voters, core Democratic constituencies there in Detroit that she is relying on in the primary. Now, the other part of this, though, is I'm going to show you a comparison to the race right now and compare that to the 2016 Democratic primary. You saw when Bernie Sanders won Michigan, and this is one of those times you saw a progressive candidate really make waves. He upset Hillary Clinton in this one. Well, he won all over the state with the exception of that Detroit area. If I go back now and compare to what you see a much different picture here. Stevens in yellow, all these counties around the state at least leading right now. That's your story in what is a very narrow lead for El Sayed, guys.
And it's just keeping us on the edges of our seats, as we will be throughout the night. Anthony in New York, thank you very much.
All right, let's check in now with Elle Myers, who is watching the Republican race for Senate. She is at a watch party that is happening right now for Mike Rogers.
Yeah, you guys, I hear that Mike Rogers is here at this watch party in Sterling Heights, but his team tells me they're not doing any media interviews. He's only here to kind of soak up that atmosphere. Let me step out of the way so I can show you what I mean by that and tell you a little bit more about Mike Rogers as well. So I'll tell you, this part of the race is pretty easy for him. He's running unopposed in the Republican primary election, but people here are excited to see him perform in the general election in just a couple months. Now, this isn't the first time Rogers has run. Back in 2024, he went head-to-head with Alyssa Slotkin and lost by just a small margin. Rogers was born and raised in Livingston County and served in the state Senate back in the 1990s. But he's no stranger to Congress either. He served at the federal level in the early 2000s. After some time in the private sector and a short stint living in Florida, Rogers is back and looking to serve again. Now, I want to mention that this seat Rogers is running for was most recently held by Senator Gary Peters, a Democrat. But you know as well as I do that Michigan is as purple as they come. We could see this seat flip red. So here behind me, we've got upwards of 300 people very excitedly watching the returns. Let me send it back to you.
All right, thank you, Elle. We are waiting for some of these candidates to take the stage as we kind of come down to the wire. And the results are still pouring in, and there is just, some really close races. Like we just heard from Anthony in New York, the Senate race is very close, closer than some people thought it would be at this point in the night. And we're still waiting to hear numbers on that gubernatorial race on the Republican side. As we announced earlier, CBS News did project that Jocelyn Benson is the Democratic nominee, and she already gave her speech, so we know she's going to be on the ballot in November. Now it's just a matter of, will it be John James, who's been kind of seen as the front runner here, or might Perry Johnson pull off the upset?
Yeah, so we'll keep waiting to see as we get more of those numbers, and we'll be hearing from some of those other candidates as we move more into the night. Right now, though, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. We are zooming in now on that Republican gubernatorial race where we're waiting to see if it'll be Congressman John James or businessman Perry Johnson. I think we have a look at some of the latest results. Still a little bit early. We are still waiting for CBS News to project a winner there, but right now, as expected, the Congressman John James in the lead with just over 50% of the vote. Perry Johnson with 36%. Those other two candidates have suspended their campaigns, so unfortunately, those votes are a bit wasted, for lack of a better term, tonight. Let's talk about that with our political analyst in studio, Jonathan Hansen. It is unfortunate. It's just kind of maybe archaic's too strong a word, but it's just the system. They dropped their campaigns somewhat recently. The ballots have already printed, so here we are.
Yep, and then some people see those names on the ballot and cast a vote. Maybe knowingly, maybe unknowingly, and it's really hard to tell.
It's a lot of votes.
It's a lot of votes. I recognize that it may be possible that some of those were absentee ballots cast prior to Mike Cox dropping out. It's hard. It's really hard to say.
Yeah.
But it does feel like with a race that's relatively close, that 14% could make kind of a difference.
Yeah.
And you kind of wonder if those people would like their vote back if they had a chance.
Yeah, and especially for the candidate who is not in the lead. You would imagine that some of them kind of think, what if we had had that corrected in time, right?
Absolutely. It's hard not to look at those numbers and add them up and just imagine that they would all come to you, I suppose. But it does create that what if hypothetical.
Now, Perry Johnson, even though he's, behind John James at this point in the night, still more than 100,000 votes. And this is a man who has run for office before a couple of times. He has spent, for what a lot of people would say is an unthinkable amount of his own money, I believe well over $20 million of his own money on this race alone. It seems like it somewhat worked. He got his name out there, and he was kind of the last man standing behind the congressman.
Well, that's for sure. I mean, the Trump endorsement was enough to drive Cox and Nesbitt out of the race.
Yeah.
And so why Perry Johnson stay in? Well, because he can keep the campaign going because he's got the funds to keep it going. Fundraising is just going to dry up for the other candidates, and they saw the writing on the wall at that point. And gosh, the guy is motivated. He clearly cares about running for office, and he's not going to stop just because. Why would he at this point? So.
And speaking of Trump and just that endorsement, how much do you think that comes into play when we're seeing these early numbers right now and we see John James with such a strong lead?
Well, you kind of think that when Trump made that endorsement, it really sort of set the race a little bit. Things were very fluid at that point. Still, if you look at the broader scope of the campaign, James was a little bit underwhelming. He started out with an advantage, and then he kind of seemed to flounder a bit. But he didn't go to some of the campaign events, and other candidates were starting to point to empty chairs and say, why isn't he here? But then James kind of rallied and recovered, and I think the Trump endorsement then kind of just brought it home in some ways, and we'll see if that brings it over the top. It looks pretty good for James right now.
Yeah, the president was in town recently. I think that was just last week in Milford, and John James was one of the endorsed candidates there on the stage with him, and that's a huge benefit in the primary. How much of that do you expect to see if John James wins tonight in these next 3 months, when he's also trying to appeal to moderate voters, independent voters?
Well, the math now changes, right? Yeah. You're not trying to solidify the base any longer. You're trying to reach out to voters who are undecided or independent voters. And those voters are not the kind of people who will necessarily respond to President Trump. So I don't know, if I were running the campaign, I'd be pretty careful about the ways in which you get the president involved, whether when he comes into the state, you clearly want him there to mobilize your base. But when it comes to appealing to voters in the middle, just look at the numbers. Trump's popularity among independents is really low. And so, and those are the voters that John James needs to pick up to win this governor's race.
Yeah, James also had some controversies on the campaign trail. He did an interview with Newsmax where he compared some peaceful protesters in Dearborn to extremists. A lot of people were really upset with that. But again, with that support and that backing of President Trump, it looks like he's still having a lead right now. How much do you think that can affect voters' decisions when they're going to the polls?
Well, I mean, that's the kind of, voter that John James needs to not alienate. And, you know, saying those kinds of things it essentially can turn off, you know, much of a whole county or a city. And that, you know, he can't afford those kinds of missteps in a race that could be really quite close. He's coming from behind. Benson's clearly been able to benefit from the fact that her primary was not a very competitive one, while the Republican primary, conversely, was quite competitive. So he's got ground to make up, and so from here on out, it's got to be a different kind of campaign.
Yeah, the congressman has run for statewide office before and didn't win. Granted, the same could be said about Abdul El Sayed. Is that a common occurrence where someone who was not able to convince an entire state's majority of people to vote for them eventually do kind of change their mind?
It doesn't happen very often, and it's not very often you get a candidate a third time. You know, third strike, you're out. I guess that would be the rule if it happens this time. But honestly, we were asking these questions the last time he ran, and he's now back as the nominee. So I would never write him out. He's got some enduring strengths, and he's, you know, winning this primary looks like, you know, with a pretty solid victory. So. Yeah, maybe the third time will be the charm.
Yeah, we'll see. With those votes coming in for Nesbitt and also for Cox, even though we know that some of them could have just been early votes, how frustrating is that just for election officials that we still see those kinds of issues where people vote in cross parties, even though the message is getting out there not to, but we still see some of these mistakes?
Yeah, I mean, I think election officials can only do so much. They're trying to actually run the elections well. It's not really their job necessarily to say, hey, this person really is not a viable candidate any longer, because that's a, you know, an interference in the way that people are casting their votes. So, you know, I guess the job is for the other candidates to make sure that voters know that they are one of the 2 or 3 remaining options.
Which I don't, have they done that? I don't think I saw anything at my polling place reminding people of which candidates were not viable anymore.
Yeah, I have.
Did you see any of that?
No,
Yeah.
did not see that either. But it, you know, I think we would like to believe that all Americans are really fully tuned in to the nuances of these campaigns. But I think the reality is a lot of people, you know, it's summer, they're sort of paying attention, you know, but they don't live and breathe politics. They're just trying to live their lives. And so when they get into the voting booth, you know, they see the name and they say, oh, I remember that guy, I like him, I'll vote.
A lot of information out there, including some brand new information. We just heard that CBS News is now projecting Congressman John James has won the Republican primary. So this November, it's going to be John James versus Jocelyn Benson. That's what's going to be on your ballot.
Yeah, so that will definitely be something for voters to keep in mind when we get to November. How do you feel, Jonathan, just about that matchup?
Well, it'll be an interesting race. You know, I think it's the kind of the race that we probably would have guessed it would be if we look back 6 months. The way it transpired was perhaps a little bit different, with Mike Duggan entering the race and shaking things up in a kind of dramatic way for quite a long time. And honestly, it looked kind of dicey for Jocelyn Benson at that point in time, whether this 3-way race she could survive that. But when Duggan pulled out and Jocelyn Benson took control of the Democratic nomination, I think we're kind of back to where we thought this race might be. And I have to say, we just now start to think about the bigger dynamics of this race. I mean, it's a midterm election that should generally favor the Democrats. At the same time, the Democrats have been the incumbents in the governor's office, and so they're kind of working in cross directions. People who are wanting change, well, who is the change at this? You know, it makes it a little murkier compared to the typical anti-incumbent situation.
Right, this is a state that voted for Donald Trump in the last election, so who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
The big question heading into November. I know we are waiting for Congressman James to take the stage any minute now. In the meantime, any final thoughts on that race before we move on to some others?
I'll be interested to see what he has to say. What is his message to the voters right now? Having won this, you know, kind of divisive primary, does he talk about healing those wounds, or does he start to reach out more broadly to the broader Michigan electorate?
We've talked a little bit about the walking of the fine line and the dance that some of these candidates are going to have to do. In the primary, you're really appealing to the base. You're kind of going hard to the right or to the left, depending on your party. Now everyone kind of has to move to the middle a little bit and be everybody's champion. Do we start to see that dance tonight, or do you think we get one more night for the base, one more for the party?
You know, I wouldn't blame any of the candidates to just have a night of celebration because their supporters are there, and you just kind of want to have that moment to thank everybody and to bring them together and one last night of we've won this primary. But you start to see that it's like in the let's look at the Democratic primary for governor, where Benson didn't have a very divisive primary to worry about, and she started reaching out immediately. It'll be interesting to see how James handles that different scenario, because he's got wounds to heal within the Republican Party, and does he start to focus on that, or does he start to turn outward towards the broader state electorate?
Yeah, strategy there.
Yeah.
When it comes to Benson and also with James, who do you think really has a lot of work to do with winning over independent voters?
They're both, this is a hard question because they're both kind of well known. I mean, they both have high name recognition. They've both been on the statewide ballot multiple times. And so, the mystery of how the swing voter decides in this state is an enduring one, and it seems to be hard to solve because they kind of flip back and forth, as we've noted in the past several elections. So I think it's going to come down to the key issues that are on voters' minds right now, and clearly affordability is number one. Who has the policies that are going to sound most effective at making cost of living easier for people, whether it's gas or groceries or housing. They've got some different policy perspectives on those things. John James will talk about cutting the state income tax. Jocelyn Benson will talk about expanding housing and trying to bring down the cost of health care. So there are some interesting policy debates to have about how to deal with affordability. And then, you can turn to some of the other issues, like, we haven't talked much about the data centers, but this is going to be a big issue in the fall campaign. And, I'm really curious to see how these two politicians navigate that issue, because it kind of took most politicians by surprise this past year.
All right, I understand the congressman is walking out to the stage right now. I think we're going to take that video. We can see just kind of the tip of his head moving in as he accepts victory for the Republican nomination for governor of Michigan. Let's listen in.
I also want to thank my incredible wife, Liz. You're the reason why I fight so hard for Michigan's future. Thank you for your sacrifices. I love you. And I also want to thank President Trump for his endorsement, his friendship, and his steadfast belief in the American people. And to every volunteer and supporter who poured your time, energy, and prayers into this cause, this victory belongs to you. The primary is over. Now we come together. One team, one fight, one mission to save Michigan. For those who support me, for those who did not, I'm going to work every single day to earn your trust. And to every Michigander who feels politically homeless, who loves this state, works hard, and believes in common sense and wonders whether anyone in government still sees you, I see you. I'm for you. And there's a place for you in this campaign. Tonight marks the beginning of Michigan's comeback, but we have to be honest about where we are. Michigan's families are paying some of the highest gasoline prices in the Midwest. Our unemployment rate's among the highest in America. Our children are falling behind. Our infrastructure is crumbling, and too many of our young people are leaving to find opportunities somewhere else. But don't worry, Benson and the Democrats will just blame Trump because they think you'll fall for it. But we're smarter than that. Here's the truth. The president's occupied the White House for less than half the time that Benson's held power in Lansing. For nearly 8 years, Jocelyn Benson's been a part of the Michigan Democratic leadership. For 2 full years under President Biden, Democrats had a trifecta in Lansing. They have the power. They passed their agenda. Now they're spending roughly $20 billion more than Michigan spent at the height of COVID. Our state budget's nearly 50% larger than it was under Governor Snyder. Does your child's school feel 50% better? How about your health care? How about your damn roads? Michigan now ranks 46th out of 50 states overall. 46th. That's 11 spots worse than California. We rank 45th in education, 43rd in our economy, 42nd in our infrastructure. Our 4th graders rank 44th in reading. 45 states are doing better than Michigan, and every one of them has the same president we do. Jocelyn Benson promises a new direction, but she has been a part of the leadership that got us lost in the first place. Now she's teaming up with Abdul El Sayed, the Midwest Mamdani, to impose a socialist agenda that's never worked anywhere it's been tried. Look, Michigan does not lack talent. We do not lack resources, but Michigan lacks proven, tested leadership where it matters the most. I've spent my life answering the call. I'm a veteran. After September 11th, I served our nation in combat and learned to bring people together from different backgrounds to accomplish tough missions. After the recession, I worked with my father and my brother, and we helped grow jobs in Detroit when families needed work and dignity and hope. I'm a congressman. I help cut taxes, secure our border, end vehicle mandates, save suffrage, and protect Medicaid for vulnerable people. Now I'm answering the call to come home. Michigan is on fire. I've always run toward the fire. This November, the choice will be clear. We offer freedom, they offer socialism. We offer change, they offer continued decline. We offer common sense, they offer crazy. But we should never underestimate how pain and desperation make false promises sound like hope. That doesn't make socialism compassionate or workable or even viable. It is none of those things. It means we must listen to people failed by the status quo and answer their pain with solutions that actually work. They don't want bureaucrats controlling their lives. They want groceries they can afford, homes they can buy, schools that will teach their children to read. They want safe streets, reliable electricity, decent health care, and a job that pays enough to raise a family on a single income. Our fellow Michiganders just want the pain to stop. But socialism will not stop that pain. It will deepen that pain. It will spread that pain, and eventually it will make that pain permanent. We cannot merely condemn socialism. We must expose it for the lie it is and show Michigan a better way. We must prove that freedom works, free enterprise works, lower taxes work, enforcing the law works, phonics works, strong families, faith, and freedom works. We will cut taxes, lower your energy bills. We're going to cut taxes. We're going to lower your energy bills. We're going to protect Medicaid for those who need it while stopping fraud and abuse for those who would steal from it. Yes. We're going to restore excellence and accountability and parental rights to our schools. We will support law enforcement, protect victims, and keep violent criminals off our streets. We're going to rebuild our roads and our bridges and our water systems and our electric grid with transparency and accountability. And we're going to make Michigan a state where our children can build their futures, not one they feel forced to leave. I know the American dream works because my family lived it. The son of a slave became a sharecropper. The son of a sharecropper became a mason. The son of a mason became a truck driver. And that son of a truck driver stands before you here tonight, the nominee from the party of Abraham Lincoln, 90 days away from becoming Michigan's first black governor. all glory and all praise and all honor to God. I am just a servant. I am here to submit to the Lord and serve all of his people, all 10 million of us. And I'm not standing here because of socialism. I'm standing here by the grace of God and through the sacrifices of my family and because the American dream is real. To my children, to my nieces and nephews, and to all of yours out there, you were created in the image of God and built for a purpose. You are not victims of history. You are the founders of your future. Freedom, not socialism, is your birthright. Michigan is made for more, and so are you. So tonight, I ask every Michigander, Republican, Democrat, Independent, none of the above, I don't care. Join us. Join us. If you want your children and your grandchildren to build their futures here, join us. If you want your children to stay in Michigan and not necessarily in your basement, your movement is with us. This is bigger than any one party. We are all Michiganders, and we're all one nation under God. This future is about our home. And I'm here to tell you, hope is on the horizon. Help is on the way. And the best is yet to come. So with that, may the Lord bless and keep each and every single one of you. May God bless the great state of Michigan, and God bless the United States of America. Good night. Thank you so much.
Terrence, Friday, it's been a busy night. We'll touch more on James' win later tonight, but right now we're going to get it back to the Stevens and El Sayed race. The winner of the Democratic ticket will be going against GOP nominee Mike Rogers, who ran in his primary unopposed. At last check, El Sayed is currently holding an almost 4% lead over Stevens, with only 30% of the vote already counted.
We have full team coverage of tonight's biggest races. We will start with Veronica Ortega and Elaine